in one piece, building the strongest naval base. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction. So please don't attempt real magic, the results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 126: The Battle of Cochin, Part 1. In reality, although most of this world is sea, and ships are the primary means of transportation for everyone from nobles to commoners, true naval battles are actually quite rare. Limited by weapon technology, early smoothbore cannons firing circular shells were almost inaccurate beyond 300 meters, so naval warfare was primarily boarding maneuvers. Battles with warships exchanging fire were practically non-existent. At this moment, the entire warship had turned sideways, and the two twin turrets at the bow and stern had slowly rotated. If it weren't for the wooden hull, it would truly resemble a battleship from a previous life. Meanwhile, Usopp was no longer on the foredeck, but had climbed to the highest point of the ship's lookout tower, holding a microphone used for shipboard communications. Watching Usopp constantly relaying various parameters to all the gun emplacements from the lookout tower, Li Yan was speechless. The people in this world seem to have brains of some unknown kind. Without any instruments, they can clearly see all the parameters of an opponent's distance, speed, and so on, just with their eyes. If it were me, I definitely couldn't do that. Meanwhile, 10 kilometers away, at the pirate fleet. That warship hasn't escaped yet? Yes, and it's even turned sideways. Capo, the Blood Wolf pirate strategist with a bounty of 138 million berries, said, "Captain, I have a bad feeling. Have you noticed? This warship is completely different from the Navy's standard warships, even different from any ship we've ever seen. Not only that, look at those two turrets at the bow and stern. Aren't those gun barrels a bit too long?" Capo observed the warship through binoculars while speaking to Garfield. Having risen to this point and gathered 3 supernova-level subordinates, Garfield was certainly not a fool. After hearing Capo's words, he also observed through binoculars for a while. That's right, something's definitely not normal. They didn't run away from our 25 pirate crews, that's one thing. And this unusual warship is another. And those huge and strange cannons, that's the third. So many suspicious points, we really need to be cautious. Alright, let's not rush forward, let the other pirate crews test their strength first. Garfield nodded and analyzed for a while before speaking. Okay, I'll go inform the navigator. This is indeed interesting. It seems the guy who could take down Vincent and the others, as well as Talus, is no ordinary person. But that's good, only those who are extraordinary deserve my hunting privileges. After Capo left, Garfield continued to observe through his binoculars, a slight smile playing on his lips as he muttered to himself. Time continued to pass. Finally, after 10 minutes, the distance between the two sides was reduced to within 5 kilometers. Fire. As Usopp's voice traveled through the metal pipes to each gun position, the Marines, who had been preparing for some time, simultaneously controlled the cannons and fired the shells. Boom, 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 boom. A whole row of 2 main gun turrets and 4 secondary gun turrets fired simultaneously, a display of power that even startled Momousagi. The immense recoil propelled the entire warship sideways by about 3 meters. Fortunately, Adam Wood was incredibly resilient. Unlike the first test of this new type of main gun, the ship didn't suffer any damage and completely withstood the massive recoil. Quick, readjust the hull. At the same time, all gun positions, quickly load shells and prepare for the second salvo. Usopp's voice once again transmitted through the metal pipes to all departments of the warship, and the Marines quickly sprang into action. Even without hearing the sound, Garfield, through his binoculars, saw the enormous sparks erupting from each gun barrel. What shocked him even more was that after firing, the entire large warship was propelled several meters by the recoil. This scene immediately gave him a very bad feeling. His eyes were fixed on the sky, trying to pinpoint the location of the shells. However, the pirates on the other ships didn't think as much as Garfield. In their logic, this Navy warship must be terrified by our massive fleet, right? Firing from 5 kilometers away? Are they kidding us? The pirates were relaxed, not taking the barrage seriously at all. But just seconds later, they realized they were wrong, terribly wrong. With Usopp's skill, coupled with the new rifled cannons, the first volley at 5 kilometers could achieve a hit rate of about 15%, and after subsequent adjustments, it could even reach over 25%. 12 shells, with sharp whooshing sounds, quickly swept across the 5-kilometer distance, finally slamming into the pirate fleet's formation. Although most of them didn't have many targets, one hit, and even 2 near misses. The pirate ship directly hit wasn't large, just a medium-sized pirate ship. The key issue was his terrible luck. The shell that hit him was fired from the ship's 280mm main cannon at the bow. The power and the sheer force of the blow were incredible. The shell pierced the deck and exploded in the lower compartment. More importantly, this compartment was the ship's ammunition storage. The immense force blew the pirate ship in two, followed by an even larger explosion caused by hundreds of shells, completely tearing the pirate ship to shreds. The fragments scattered across the sea. As for the other 2 pirate ships that were hit by near misses, while not quite as badly damaged, they were still hit within 20 meters. Their hulls were torn open, seawater flooding in, and many pirates on deck were even thrown into the sea by the powerful shockwave. Even Garfield, holding his binoculars, trembled slightly at the sight. What the hell was that? Could it be the legendary Pluto? Although Garfield had heard of the 3 ancient weapons, he didn't know much about them, only that Pluto was a powerful warship. And speaking of powerful warships, wasn't this one right in front of him? That's why Garfield had this thought. If Li Yan knew that Garfield was currently speculating whether his warship was Pluto, he would definitely be speechless. Ignorance is terrifying. Chapter 127 The Battle of Korchin, Part 2. Capo. Looking at the pirate ship torn to pieces 100 meters away, Garfield also felt the urge to retreat. Such accuracy at a distance of 5 kilometers, what would happen if they got any closer? No, he couldn't fight these Marines at sea, there was absolutely no chance on the surface. The only option was to go to Korchin Island, lure the Marines ashore, and then surround and kill them on the island. After all, it was such a large island, over 30 kilometers in diameter, as long as he hid in the middle, those cannons wouldn't pose a threat. And even if those naval cannons really hit that far, Garfield truly didn't believe they could be so accurate at over 10 kilometers. Having made up his mind, Garfield immediately shouted for Chief of Staff Habo. "Captain, I'm here. Notify the navigator to turn the ship around immediately and return to Korchin Island. Also, have Abel and Rick come to the deck. During the return voyage, the 4 of us will intercept naval shells together. Captain, if we retreat to Korchin Island now, wouldn't that be the same as being trapped on the island? We're going to retreat anyway, so why not just get away from this area?" Tilting his head, Capo asked, somewhat puzzled. "Are you stupid? You're my chief of staff, for goodness sake. Didn't you see that warship has no sails? Do you know what that means? It means that this warship uses the same brand new propulsion system as that ship's cannon, and this propulsion system is definitely faster than sail propulsion, otherwise, there's no need to design it this way. So, whether we escape by sea or bravely charge up to board and fight, it's almost impossible." Looking at his staff officer, Capo, also a supernova, said irritably, "With your ship slower than the enemy's, that warship can easily keep you at a distance, making it impossible for them to hit you. The same applies to escaping, they could even let you run for an hour, dealing with all the pirates there before chasing you. Therefore, the only solution is to drag the ship to Korchin Island, using the natural environment to conceal themselves and lure the Navy there to deal with them." Garfield's reminder made Capo realize the situation, and he immediately ran to find the navigator. A short while later, 4 pirates with bounties exceeding 100 million stood together on the deck, and the entire pirate ship began to turn around. This scene stunned all the other pirate crews. They were planning to charge forward together and force a boarding action. But now, their crew had barely started charging when their core, the Blood Wolf pirates, had already fled? That's too much? However, just as they were stunned, a barrage of cannonballs rained down, instantly throwing the entire fleet into chaos. At the same time, on Li Yan's test ship, Admiral, the Blood Wolf pirates' ship has turned around. Judging by the direction, they're fleeing towards Korchin Island. Ignore them, eliminate the other pirate crews first. Understood, Admiral. Usopp nodded and shouted back from the lookout tower, then continued to observe the pirate fleet ahead through his binoculars, relaying the firing parameters to each gun position. Round after round, the bombardment from several kilometers away, coupled with the Blood Wolf pirates' escape, finally broke the remaining pirate crews, who scattered and fled. Some followed the Blood Wolf pirates towards Corchin Island, while others fled towards the open sea. If it were any other warship, they might have been forced to choose which to pursue. But these weren't standard naval warships, they were new warships equipped with a completely new propulsion system and ultra-long-range cannons. The warships will proceed directly to Corchin Island. As for those 7 pirate ships fleeing to the open sea, Usopp, take care of them all before we reach Corchin Island. Any questions? No problem, Rear Admiral. Without the slightest hesitation, Usopp answered immediately. To escape his firing range, they would have to run at least 10 kilometers, giving Usopp enough time to fire over 100 shots. He wasn't worried about taking down 7 of them. Navigator, deploy the propellers, adjust course, target Corchin Island. Yes, Rear Admiral. Boom 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 boom. Amidst a continuous barrage of cannon fire, the test ship began to move, heading towards Corchin Island. This scene was also witnessed by the pirate crews, especially the Blood Wolf pirates. Captain, you were right. They really were prioritizing attacks on the pirate crews fleeing to the open sea. Garp said with lingering fear as he watched another pirate ship sink. Normal operation. If I had ships and weapons like those, I would do the same. But it's good this way. With them drawing fire, we can safely escape back to Corchin Island. Once we're on the island, the outcome is uncertain. By the way, before reaching Corchin Island, don't let your guard down. Be prepared to intercept cannon fire at any time. Everyone, don't worry, Captain. Half an hour later, the 7 pirate ships that fled to the open sea couldn't escape the warship's pursuit and all sank to the bottom of the sea. As for the pirates who didn't die and fell into the water, Li Yan had no interest in rescuing them. Perhaps, after dealing with the pirates on the island, if they hadn't become food for some sea creatures, Li Yan might send someone to capture them and take them back to the 18th branch's Haiti prison. But if they didn't survive until then he could only hope they were good people in their next life. However, they didn't have time to kill many more pirates on the sea, and the pirate crews fleeing towards Corchin Island managed to escape to the island. Looking towards the approaching Corchin Island, hundreds of Marines had already assembled on the foredeck. This time, Li Yan brought mostly elite Marines, along with a small number of ordinary random Marines who were relatively strong and talented. Even the weakest among them had a power level of over 30, and some of the stronger ones could even reach around 100. As for Luffy or Buggy, their current strength made dealing with pirates with bounties of over 100 million easy, and Najiko was practically a strategic weapon. Unbeknownst to many, the combat power of the 18th branch was already approaching that of the G1 or G5 branches in the New World. The reason there was still a gap was mainly because there were still too few vice admirals. Currently, only Li Yan and Najiko could truly rival the headquarters vice admirals. Of course, they were only comparable to ordinary vice admirals, not elite vice admirals, and certainly not admiral candidates like Momousagi. Another 10 minutes or so passed. The warship finally docked not far from the shore. Mr. Yixio, this warship can't afford any accidents. I'll leave it to you to guard it after I go ashore. Don't worry, Major General Li Yan, with me here. No one will dare to lay a finger on this warship. Yixio nodded confidently. Li Yan, who is that blind man? Is he very strong? After disembarking in a small boat, Momousagi immediately approached Li Yan and asked. Very strong, probably able to take on 10 of you. Huh? Chapter 128. How difficult can it be for a bunch of weaklings? He can take on 10 Momousagi. This wasn't Li Yan exaggerating, that's just how exaggerated the combat power of an admiral-level officer is, especially considering Momousagi is only at the initial stage of becoming a great swordsman. If it were an ordinary vice admiral, even 100 tied together wouldn't be able to defeat an admiral. However, Momousagi clearly didn't believe Li Yan at all. She clearly looked like a harmless, kind-faced blind man. Okay, Captain, that group of Marines has landed, over 100 of them. And, I even saw the figure of Admiral candidate Momousagi. In the center of the island, in a grove of trees, Capo, who had been keeping his eyes closed, suddenly changed his expression and opened them to report to Garfield. Admiral candidate Momousagi, are you sure you didn't see wrong? Yes, I'm sure. We've fought her before, how could I forget what she looks like? Gritting his teeth, Capo confirmed. It all happened over a year ago, a chance encounter on the Grand Line. The Blood Wolf pirates, who had just begun to make a name for themselves, happened to run into Momausaji's warship. A bloody battle ensued, and the Blood Wolf pirates were, of course, defeated. That battle resulted in the loss of dozens of crew members, including 3 officers with bounties exceeding 50 million, a significant loss. It took Garfield a full 6 months to replenish their forces. After all, high-level combatants aren't something you can just replace at will. Mama Sato, we're not the same as we were a year ago. Besides, she's ultimately just a woman, and aside from swordsmanship, she's not that strong in other areas. She might be strong one-on-one, but she's no match for a group attack. This time, we'll settle old scores together, don't expect her to die too easily. As he said this, Garfield's eyes flashed with a ferocious light. She was just a woman at the peak of her swordsmanship. Although Garfield admitted he probably couldn't beat her in a one-on-one fight, a 4-on-1 attack should be enough to take her down. Of course, if he knew Momausaji was already a great swordsman, he probably wouldn't have made such a boast. Where are the others? Are they just ordinary Marines? There's a rear admiral, a commodore, and several field-grade officers. HMPH, we've killed rear admirals and commodores before. As long as there aren't any other vice admirals, that's fine. As for the field-grade officers and ordinary Marines, let those pirate crews deal with them. Understood, Captain. Nodding, Capo turned and went to communicate with the pirate crews. When they heard that they only needed to deal with the field-grade officers and ordinary Marines, they breathed a sigh of relief. Perhaps these pirate crews couldn't defeat a rear admiral or vice admiral, but dealing with a few field-grade Marines was no problem. Soon, the pirate crews divided the prey and waited for the other side to enter the forest. At the same time, Li Yan had indeed led his men to the edge of the forest in the center of the island. Looking at the forest before him, Li Yan frowned slightly. This kind of place wasn't exactly friendly to the Corona Type 18. Usopp, you take the sniper squadron and infiltrate the forest first. Find advantageous sniping positions and snipe freely after the battle begins. Yes, Major General, follow me. With a wave of Usopp's hand, 20 Marines carrying rifles stepped out of formation and followed him into the forest. They were the 20 most skilled shooters in the 18th branch, and were equipped with a sniper version of the Corona Type 18 rifle produced by the Pre-Range Laboratory. Most importantly, in the past month, Li Yan had taught them a lot of sniper combat experience based on his experience from the future. Although Li Yan himself didn't know much, even some common sense was quite advanced experience in this world. Li Yan, I was just about to ask, what kind of gun is this? It looks a bit like the Corona Type 18, but it's not quite the same, especially with a monocular telescope attached to it. Well, after being asked this by Momausaji, Li Yan didn't know how to answer. Speaking of sniper rifles, there are snipers in this world, but they all rely on their naked eyes to operate the scopes. The most typical example is Yassip, Usopp's father, from the red-haired pirates. Scopes? What's the point of that? Isn't it better to just use your eyes? Li Yan really couldn't refute this, his eyesight was just that outrageous. This is a rifle based on the Corona Type 18, modified by Levin and his crew, specifically for precision sniping. Its effective range has been increased by 200 meters to 800 meters. As for that thing on top, it's not a telescope, but a sniper rifle scope, used for aiming assistance. Seeing Momausaji's curious expression, Li Yan explained. However, Momausaji quickly lost interest and even started to complain in her mind. There are plenty of snipers at headquarters, they can shoot very accurately without these scopes, right? However, she forgot one thing. The snipers at headquarters only target objects within 100 to 200 meters, while the 20 snipers under Li Yan's command can each hit their target perfectly from 500 meters away. Some of the best even exceeded the effective range of the firearms themselves, achieving precise sniping at a distance of 1,000 meters. However, Li Yan wasn't going to explain further to Momausaji. Otherwise, she would probably pester him for dozens more. At the same time, deep in the forest, Capo closed his eyes again and activated his Devil Fruit ability. His Devil Fruit ability was called the Peep Peep Fruit. Yes, it was peeping in that sense. By touching an object, he could see the surrounding scenery even from hundreds of kilometers away. However, He could only set up a maximum of 3 peep points at a time. At this moment, he was observing Li Yan and the others' every move from a rock outside the forest. "Captain, 20 armed Marines entered the woods first, but it's strange." "Strange?" "Yes, the one giving orders wasn't Mamousaji, but a rear admiral." "Oh, that's interesting. Since they're in, have those pirate crews go and meet them. You keep an eye on Mamousaji and the other 2 admirals. If they make a move, we'll move in." "Understood." Speaking of which, there were 11 pirate crews that escaped back to Corchin Island with Garfield and the others. The weakest captain had a bounty of 47 million, while the strongest had a bounty of 98 million, and their combined pirate crew numbered over 500. They might be unsure about dealing with Li Yan and Mamousaji, but they were very confident about dealing with the Marines under their command. After all, ordinary Marines were nothing to them. How difficult could it be? As long as they weren't outnumbered, it wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, not only are they not outnumbered by the Navy, but they have also gained a 5-fold advantage in numbers over the Navy. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129: The Temptation of 100 Billion Berries. In the woods, hundreds of pirates, some wielding swords, others guns or other weapons, moved swiftly through the forest. Tisk-tisk, over 500 men divided among 20 Marines, that's really something. "Nagi, don't be careless. Capo said these Marines are no pushovers." "So what if they're no pushovers? Do you think these Marines are all at the level of a rear admiral or even a vice admiral?" "That's true." The captain of the Axe Pirates, Vent, with a bounty of 72 million berries, nodded in agreement. This was indeed true. If even Marines possessed the strength of a rear admiral or vice admiral, the pirate era would have ended long ago. As for the officers below the admiral rank, they might be considered important figures in the 4 seas, but on the Grand Line, they were utterly insignificant. Right? Don't kill them all later, leave a few alive. I need to get my revenge for what happened at sea. Ho ha ho ha. However, bang! With a gunshot from afar, a bloody hole appeared on Naji's temple, who had just been laughing maniacally. The maniacal smile froze on his face, and then his entire body, as if drained of all strength, slowly collapsed to the ground, the flowing blood quickly pooling into a pool. "Everyone take cover." After a full 2 seconds of stunned silence, Vent finally came to his senses, quickly hiding behind a tree while shouting loudly. "A gun? How could this be?" Although Naji was the weakest among them, he still had a bounty of 47 million. To be shot dead without even seeing where the shooter was? Can you believe it? Moreover, even if Naji had just stood there and been shot, with his muscular physique, it was impossible for him to be killed by a single shot, even if it hit his head. Vent, judging from the sound of the gunfire, it came from the north. "Let's flank them." "Okay, but be careful to use obstacles for cover along the way." "Okay." Beth, with a bounty of 77 million, who was hiding not far away, immediately consulted with Vent after confirming the direction. The two quickly agreed and led their respective men in 2 separate groups to flank the north. Bang 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 bang. Several more gunshots rang out, and correspondingly, the same number of pirates fell to the ground, each with a bloody hole in their head, showing that those who fired the shots were all highly skilled. However, this time the attack didn't come from the north, but from all directions, even from behind. This made Vent and his men, who had just found cover, immediately afraid to move rashly. Meanwhile, 100 meters away, on a giant tree, Usopp was bound with many branches, almost becoming one with the tree. However, he was also inwardly cursing. There were just too many trees. Except for a tiny fraction of the view, everything else was blocked, obstructing the view and providing countless hiding places for those inside. If they didn't move, he was helpless. But Usopp remembered what Li Yan had told him: patience is the most important thing for a sniper. He took a deep breath, suppressing his restlessness, and remained motionless like a stone, continuing to aim his rifle. The other snipers were in a similar situation. For them, becoming snipers meant loneliness and endurance were the main elements that permeated their entire sniping careers. However, while the Marines remained calm, the pirates couldn't. Only 3 minutes had passed before some pirates couldn't resist and, using the surrounding trees for cover, began to move. However, bang, bang, Bang! 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 Gunshots rang out again instantly, and more than a dozen pirates were killed, their deaths exactly the same as the previous ones, each with a bloody hole in their head. Don't move. Seeing this, Vent shouted again, finally calming the restless pirates down. Vent, what do we do? Ordinary pirates are just asking for trouble by showing their faces now. Let's form a team, including all the captains and all the pirates with a bounty of over 30 million. Vent pondered for a moment after hearing Beth's question before speaking. So, everyone, don't hold back. Show us what you've got. I have no objection, but it seems the Marines aren't grouped together, they're scattered everywhere. How exactly should we proceed? The idea was good, but the specifics of how to proceed needed to be clarified. After all, nobody wanted to be the first to act, right? This is simple. Ignore everything else and focus on taking him down. Once we've seized his weapon, we'll know why their bullets are so powerful. And don't you think this might be the new type of firearm the Navy used during the battle at G1 Branch, as mentioned in the World Economic Daily? Currently, all the major powers are investigating the source of this powerful weapon. If we can seize one, even if we retreat immediately, we'll have made a fortune. Even if the price is high, many powers will be willing to buy it. Hearing this, the pirate captain's eyes lit up. That's right. Putting aside others, even if it's sold to Joker, he'd probably be willing to buy it for 1 billion berries, right? After all, Joker controls the arms trade in the underworld. If he buys one and replicates it, he could easily earn back more than 1 billion, even 100 billion or 1 trillion. So, what I mean is, let's go all out to take one down, and then, while the Navy is fighting the Blood Wolf pirates, find a chance to leave Corchin Island. I have connections with Joker. How about we split the loot after we sell it? Seeing that the other captains were interested, Vent persuaded them again, while secretly sneering. Almost no one knew that Vent had another identity, Joker, an apprentice combatant under the 7 warlords of the sea, Doflamingo. Once he contacted the young master to make the deal, would they still want money? Dream on. And he, having made such a great contribution, might even become a full-fledged combatant. Let's do it. Me too. Agreed. Originally there were 11 pirate crews, but now, without Nagi, there were only 10 A-guns sold for 1 billion, and each pirate crew could get 100 million. This was a considerable income, enough for them to recruit more soldiers and even refurbish their pirate ships. The captains of the pirate crews were immediately tempted. 1 billion is enough for you? Once we get that gun, we can even launch a surprise attack on their warships while the Navy is fighting blood wolves. Just think of those terrifying naval cannons. If we can seize that warship, 1 billion, let alone 1 billion, will be a piece of cake. Hearing this, the captains were stunned, 3 words echoing repeatedly in their minds: 1 billion, 1 billion, 1 billion. Chapter 130 The Pirates Who Were Recklessly Courting Death. In the central woods of Corchin Island, bang 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 bang. More than 20 pirates, each with a bounty of at least 30 million, were using their skills to rush towards a sniper position. This scene was naturally spotted by the Marines at each sniper position, who immediately pulled the triggers of their sniper rifles. Bullets burst out from the barrels. But this time, things weren't as smooth as before. These pirates were all quite strong to begin with, and they were all prepared, each using their most trump cards. One pirate even turned into a stone statue, enduring a bullet and only suffering minor injuries. As a result, the 5 Marines who happened to have a view and fired decisively failed to achieve any results. And when they reloaded, there was no longer a view, so they had to give up temporarily. At this moment, about 50 meters directly in front of Vent and the others, Usopp's eyes widened. These guys are coming for me? At this point, escape was virtually impossible. Even with Thor's training, Usopp's physical skills were still lacking, making it impossible for him to escape from this group of pirates, all with bounties in the tens of millions. Calm down, the Rear Admiral seems to have mentioned what to do in this situation. Think carefully, I remember. A few seconds later, after several more shots from different directions, Vent and the others finally arrived at Usopp's sniping position and confirmed that this was the right place. They could even see spent shell casings on the ground. But the crucial question was, where were the men and the guns? Looking at the area, which had many traces but was deserted, Vent and the others stared blankly, utterly bewildered. What they didn't notice was that about 3 meters away, in a patch of grass, an eye was peering at them through a gap. Damn it, my first mate died halfway there, And we just came up empty-handed, one of the pirate captains complained, hiding behind a tree. What do we do now? Continuing like this isn't working. Should we just risk some losses and retreat? Just retreat like that? Forget about the 10 billion berries? Still thinking about 10 billion berries? If we keep dragging this out, we'll all be worn down sooner or later. These Marines are definitely not normal. Don't forget there are still nearly 100 Marines outside who haven't gotten in yet. That's right, so many people have died, and we haven't even seen a single Marine yet. It's outrageous. Vent, say something. Suddenly, everyone's attention was focused on Vent again. But at this moment, his mood was far from pleasant. The plan had gone perfectly, but they hadn't even seen a shadow of one. This was too ridiculous. Guys, since this place is difficult, let's change targets. Change targets? What do you mean, Vent? It's simple. Like Dawn just said, even if we lose some men, we'll withdraw directly from the forest to the west, leaving the battlefield to the Marines and the Blood Wolf pirates. But that's a billion berries. Some captains were still reluctant, as it was a huge sum for them, even if each only received 100 million. If they withdrew like this, not only would they lose the money, but they'd likely lose many men along the way. After all, there were 20 Marines hiding somewhere, just waiting for them to show themselves. No, we still want the money. Don't forget, there's still a warship on the shore, and it's practically empty right now. If we can seize that warship, it'll be worth at least a billion berries, even 100 billion. So, we'll retreat, let the Marines fight Blood Wolf and his crew, and then we'll seize the warship and leave Corchin Island quickly. Hearing Vent's words, the group of pirate captains realized what he meant. That's right, the warship was the real prize. Compared to that, the $1 billion worth of firearms was nothing. Besides, who said the warship didn't have more firearms? There was a high probability they did. Good idea, I agree. Me too. Agreed. No one objected. The captains quickly reached a consensus. Meanwhile, 3 meters away, Usopp, blending seamlessly into the grass, heard their entire conversation. Good heavens, they actually wanted to hijack a warship. That's suicide. You see, Uncle Aisho is currently on the warship, a figure even more terrifying than a rear admiral, or even Vice Admiral Momousagi. Whenever Usopp recalls the meteor shower performance that blind uncle gave them half a month ago, he can't help but tremble. It was truly terrifying. Most importantly, Usopp had even witnessed Li Yan's sparring match with Aisho. That scene, wow. Therefore, hearing that Vent and his crew wanted to rob the warship, Usopp couldn't help but think to himself, these pirates are really courting death. Once they reached an agreement, Vent quickly devised a plan to escape the forest. Actually, it was still the usual pirate plan, have his henchmen act as cannon fodder to draw fire, while the captains escaped. As for how much the ordinary pirates could produce, nobody cared anymore. 10 billion berries. Even if 10 people had to share it, each person would still get 10 billion berries. With that kind of money, what couldn't they do? They could even retire from being pirates altogether. The next moment, under the command of their respective captains, the remaining less than 500 pirates all left their hiding place and ran wildly westward. In open terrain, 20 Marines could easily have taken out most of them before they even reached firing range. But this was a forest, with too many cover, making it impossible for these snipers to do so. Soon, hundreds of pirates had reached Usopp's side, their frantic footsteps trampling around him. At one point, the footsteps were only 3 centimeters from his nose, startling him so much that he almost jumped up, but he managed to hold back. Finally, the footsteps around him diminished, indicating that most of the pirates had passed. But before Usopp could even breathe a sigh of relief, a pirate pounced on him, startling him so much that the word doomed immediately flashed through his mind. He immediately rolled away from the pirate, then crouched down and raised his gun to aim. But the pirate Usopp had shaken off remained lying motionless on the ground until blood slowly seeped from his body. Only then did Usopp realize that the guy had been shot and was dead. 3 minutes later, outside the forest. Admiral, that group of pirates all fled westward into the forest. There are about 300 of them. And judging from the direction they left the forest, it seems they went towards our warship. Chapter 131 The Don Quixote Family's Intervention. They've gone to the warship? Hearing Najiko's report from her long-range humanoid radar, Li Yan couldn't help but smile slightly. Li Yan, there's still time. Quickly return to the warship. Those cannons can't fall into the hands of the pirates. However, Momousaji panicked immediately. She knew all too well what the consequences would be if the pirates stole that warship and its cannons. Thousands upon thousands of Marines would likely die at the hands of that warship. Uncle Yixio is on the warship, it's alright. We should go deal with that blood wolf Garfield now. I heard there are 4 supernovas with bounties over 100 million in this pirate crew? Compared to Momousaji's anxiety, Lian seemed completely unconcerned, which infuriated her. Lian, you bastard. Momousaji cursed, then turned and quickly left. Judging by the direction, where else could he be but the warship? Seeing this, Lian could only smile wryly. These days, nobody believes the truth. Everyone, into the woods, just as Lian led the Marines into the woods. Deep within the forest. Captain, those Marines came in, but Momousaji didn't follow. She left, and she seems quite anxious. Capo, still with his eyes closed, used his devil fruit ability to monitor every move outside the woods. That's good. We can deal with the other Marines first, and then chase after Momousaji together to kill her. That'll give us a better chance. By the way, how are things with Vent and the others? Garfield asked again after nodding. Shortly after Vent and his group set off, there was a burst of gunfire, but the gunfire soon became very sparse and eventually disappeared completely, leading everyone to believe that the Marines who had come in as scouts had all been killed by Vent. But not long after, a burst of intense gunfire rang out again, lasting for a long time, with at least 200 shots fired. This left Garfield somewhat puzzled. They wanted to let Capo see what was going on, but the problem was that Capo's ability was completely ineffective in the forest. After all, it was just spying, not X-ray vision, and the forest obscured the view too much? I don't know. The people we sent out to scout haven't returned yet. Never mind them for now. While Momousaji is away, let's hurry up and take care of the other Marines. At the same time, in the latter half of the Grand Line, in the New World, Dressrosa. Burp 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 hello. Young master, this is Vent. When the Den Mushi was answered, Vent's deliberately lowered voice came through. Vent? The mission went wrong? Doflamingo remembered Vent. He was one of his current trainee combatants, currently on a mission in Corchin as part of his promotion assessment. Moreover, he had personally given Vent this mission, to find an opportunity to infiltrate the Blood Wolf pirates and await further instructions. Young master, it's not that the mission went wrong, it's that a major incident has occurred on Corchin Island. What happened? Doflamingo frowned, then asked. Admiral Candidate Momousaji from headquarters has arrived with a new type of Navy warship. This warship has no sails, but it can travel at a faster speed than a sailing ship. Crucially, its cannons can maintain about a 20% hit rate even at a distance of 5 kilometers. A fleet composed of more than 20 pirate crews was instantly defeated. The pirate crews have all retreated into the island, but the Navy has also stormed it. Using the simplest and most hushed tone possible, Vent described the events from beginning to end. Doflamingo quickly gleaned several key words from the description: new warship, new cannons, new firearms. Faster speed, farther and more accurate artillery fire, more powerful firearms. No one understood what these things represented better than the world's largest underground arms dealer. Went, no matter the cost, you must seize that warship. Once you have it, go immediately to the Ramen Islands. Diamante is on his way there for a transaction, only about 100 nautical miles from you. I'll have him prepared to meet you. If this is accomplished, you'll be a full member of the Duanquixote family. Hearing Doflamingo's words, Winter was instantly excited. A full member of the family. That was far more impressive than being a combatant. After all, only about a dozen people could be called members of the Duanquixote family, essentially Doflamingo's core team. This was a meteoric rise. Yes, young master. Inside the King's Highlands, after ending the call with Winter, Doflamingo was still somewhat uneasy and immediately picked up the Den Mushi again. Burp 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 hello. Diamante, it's me. Doflamingo, what's wrong? Where are you now? Me? I'm heading to the Ramen Islands. I should be there in half a day. I'm currently in the waters north of Corchin Island. Upon hearing this, Doflamingo's eyes lit up. You mean you're on Corchin Island now? Yes. Great. Immediately change course and head to Corchin Island to meet Vent. Meet Vent? But that would mean missing the transaction. Can't we wait until after the transaction? No, this matter is more important. Even if it means giving up the transaction, I'm willing to do it. Vent just contacted me. Through the Den Den Mushy, Doflamingo relayed what Vent had said to Diamante. After hearing this, Diamante immediately understood the importance of the matter. Indeed, compared to this, even the 500 million berry arms deal he was in charge of became insignificant. I understand, I'll go right away. Okay, but be careful of Mamousaji. You're no match for her right now. If necessary, have your men hold her off. Your only goal is to seize the warship and leave immediately, even if it means abandoning the cargo on your ship. Don't worry, Doflamingo, I'll handle it. Okay. Just as Doflamingo was talking to Diamante, in the center of Corchin Island, Li Yan and his group had already met up with the Blood Wolf pirates in the forest. There was no unnecessary talk between the two sides, and they immediately started fighting. Leave Blood Wolf to me. Anne, Luffy, and Buggy will take care of the other 3 supernovas. Najiko, take care of the ordinary marines. Understood. In this environment, firearms were not very effective because there were too many obstacles. In addition, the two sides were already less than 100 meters apart when they made contact, so there was hardly any firing. The two sides entered a close quarters melee. Li Yan, who had already seen the bounty poster, immediately locked onto Garfield's location, and Garfield also locked onto Li Yan, the highest-ranking marine present. A major general? Before dealing with Mamousaji, I'll use you as a warm-up. Not bad. White Wolf Fruit, Wolfpack Mode. Chapter 132. Let me enjoy this a little longer. Garfield is a wolf king, and an extremely ferocious one at that, as evidenced by his nickname. Despite eating the Zoan-type white wolf fruit, his nickname is Blood Wolf. This is because he's always covered in blood after battle, of course, all of it enemy blood. As a true wolf king, Garfield never engages in one-on-one combat, he always hunts in packs. This pack mode is an ability he's developed through deep cultivation of his devil fruit. In this mode, Garfield can control those with his blood within them. This control is even stronger than some Paramecia-type devil fruits. No matter how much they resist, it's useless. But the prerequisite is that Garfield must leave his blood inside that person. His bloodshot eyes stared directly at Li Yan, but Garfield didn't move. Instead, he controlled 7 pirates to begin their hunt for Li Yan. These 7 were specially trained by Garfield. Despite not having any bounties and appearing like ordinary pirates, they were still active. In reality, each of them possessed strength comparable to a pirate with a bounty of at least 50 million. Coupled with Garfield's control, their teamwork was like that of a single person. Even pirates with bounties exceeding 100 million wouldn't last long against them. However, was Li Yan merely a pirate with a bounty of 100 million? Clearly not. The Great Great Sword, Sun Chaser, in his hands was like a natural extension of his body, as simple and natural as controlling his own arm. Add to that his observation haki, specifically designed for bullying others in the first half of the Grand Line, and even with the 7 of them working in perfect harmony, they couldn't break through Li Yan's defenses. Instead, they all suffered numerous sword wounds. Flying Slash. With a low shout from Li Yan, a black and white streak of intertwined light was instantly released from his wielding Sun Chaser, hurtling towards an open space ahead. Yes, it was an open space, and it seemed like a mistake, but in the next moment, one of the 7 people controlled by Garfield crashed into it. Visually, it wasn't that Li Yan's slash hit anyone, but rather that a pirate, like a moth to a flame, charged straight into Li Yan's slash. Coincidence? Or? Seeing this, Garfield was somewhat bewildered. From their previous exchange, he had sensed that Li Yan was far stronger than he had anticipated. This was not the strength of a mere lieutenant general, but at least at the level of an ordinary vice admiral. And his seemingly accidental slash just now left Garfield even more confused. However, Garfield was a wolf, and the greatest characteristics of a wolf are patience and observation. To be precise, the essence of the Wolfpack mode wasn't hunting, but rather for Garfield, as the Wolf King, to probe the enemy, forcing out their weaknesses through continuous attacks. This was why Garfield hadn't joined the battle, but instead remained outside the fray, controlling and observing simultaneously. The loss of one wolf cub wasn't a big deal. The ability was activated again, and another pirate quickly leaped over and joined the battle. Although the Wolfpack mode was activated by controlling 7 wolf cubs, it didn't mean Garfield only raised 7. In fact, besides the initial 7, Garfield had 3 more available as replacements. That's quite an interesting ability, but how many wolf cubs do you actually have as backups? Looking at the 7 remaining around him, Li Yan's lips curled into a slight smile as he spoke. This was at least 50 million bounty level strength. Li Yan didn't believe Garfield could raise his entire pirate crew to this level, allowing for constant replacement. Garfield didn't respond to Li Yan's question, instead controlling the seven to launch an even fiercer and more tightly coordinated attack. However, no matter how well the seven cooperated, supported by observation haki, they couldn't even touch Li Yan's clothes, let alone inflict any damage. This must be what they call haki, right? Watching Li Yan's somewhat illogical dodges, coupled with that inexplicable yet deadly slash that killed one of his wolf cubs, Garfield suddenly remembered the information he'd previously obtained. In the latter half of the Grand Line, in the New World, almost all the powerful individuals possessed a power called haki, and one type, observation haki, granted the user near omnidirectional vision, making any sneak attack impossible. Could this Marine Rear Admiral possess haki? He needed to test it a few more times to confirm. Thinking this, Garfield immediately changed his hunting strategy, switching to a six-man main attack with one sneak attack, using a frenzied offensive to completely draw the opponent's attention, thus creating an opportunity for the remaining person. Soon, under this offensive approach, the opportunity arose. A perfect opportunity for a sneak attack from behind. With 6 people attacking from different angles simultaneously from the front, there was no way to be distracted by the deadly strike from behind. However, when this deadly attack was launched, Li Yan dodged it again, as if he had eyes in the back of his head. It seems we can basically confirm it's that thing called observation haki. However, this is difficult. If we don't suppress his strength, it's hard to truly hurt this Marine Rear Admiral, since every move he makes is subject to his observation haki. But it's not without a chance. As long as we don't give him the opportunity to unleash a slash like he did just now, it seems he can only dodge. In this way, even if he isn't exhausted by the wolf cubs, he will definitely have used up most of his stamina, and then I'll be more confident when I make my move. Outside the battle, Garfield was still observing carefully and analyzing in detail. However, he didn't know that it wasn't that Li Yan didn't want to deal with these so-called wolf cubs, but rather that the perfect coordination of these 7 pirates under Garfield's control was just too much to Li Yan's liking. Concentrating all his attention, he pushed his observation haki to its limit, dodging again and again the perfect multi-person combo attacks that would be impossible to avoid under normal circumstances. The constant notification sounds in his mind were like heavenly music. Ding. Host has gained 1% observation haki proficiency, current LV, 28, 56%. Ding. Host has gained 1% observation haki proficiency, current LV, 28, 57%. Ding. Host has gained 1% observation haki proficiency, current LV, 28, 58%. This was far more effective than blindfolding himself in the branch and having a few Marines practice with him. So much so that Li Yan was reluctant to end it. As for killing one of them earlier, it was simply to test whether using observation haki to lock onto target and then attack would also grant proficiency. However, the result was only 1% proficiency, which disappointed Li Yan somewhat. He had no choice but to continue using this method to train his observation haki. As for whether the other Marines would suffer casualties because of his procrastination, Li Yan wasn't worried at all. With Najiko around, she can save any Marine in a life-threatening situation. So, before your skill level increases too slowly, enjoy yourself a little longer. Chapter 133 Meteorite Fall. On the test ship west of Horkin Island, Barry was leading his men on a thorough inspection of the warship's condition after a long naval battle, while several members of the science department were checking the ship's cannons with various instruments. Everyone was extremely busy, except for Yixio, who had somehow found a chair and was comfortably drinking tea on the deck. Mr. Yixio, a large number of pirates are approaching, nearly 300. Just then, a Marine on the lookout tower spotted something through his binoculars and shouted towards the deck below. Hearing this, Yixio stood up and looked several hundred meters away. Sure enough, nearly 300 pirates were rushing towards them. Mr. Yixio, do you need our help? At this moment, Barry and Bitley approached Yixio and asked. Although they were shipwrights, each of them was quite strong, they could easily take on dozens of ordinary pirates each. Of course, Barry was an exception at this moment. That guy was just a 12-year-old child and probably couldn't beat any of them. Without replying, Aisho slowly drew a cane sword from his cane, then swung it sharply into the air. Well, there was no sudden movement, Although it looked impressive, Aisho simply swung it in the air and then put the sword back into his cane. Everyone, get back to work. This work must be finished before the Rear Admiral returns, otherwise it will affect our departure. Turning around, as if nothing had happened, Aisho said to Barry and the others. Oh, right, could you please take care of the cleanup of those pirates over there? Suddenly remembering something, Aisho said again to the dozen or so Marines who had gathered on the deck, then returned to his seat to enjoy his tea. Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment, not understanding what was going on. Just then, a Marine looked up at the sky, a look of terror on his face. When the others noticed his expression, they too looked up. What they saw was utterly bizarre. A meteorite, engulfed in flames and trailing a plume of black smoke, was falling from the sky. Hiss. A meteorite? Everyone was shocked, then filled with fear. This was no joke. Even the smallest meteorite would have an impact radius of hundreds or even thousands of meters. If it were larger, the entire island would probably be destroyed. But now, even if they wanted to escape, it was probably too late. What's the panic? Suddenly, the captain of the remaining Marines, Vaughn, shouted. Others might not know what was happening, but he did. Half a month ago, when Li Yan and Yi Xiao went to a deserted island for a sparring match, he was the one who led a group of Marines to pilot the warship. Although he hadn't followed the two to the island, nor witnessed the details of their battle, he did see a meteorite fall from the sky towards the island. Although Li Yan's sudden flying slashes from the island shattered the meteorite into pieces, the side of the meteorite's fall remained vivid in his memory. He had always believed it was a chance, unexpected event, until he saw Yi Xiao's inexplicable sword swing and, coupled with the falling meteorite, Vaughn finally understood. This was all Yi Xiao's doing. No wonder the Major General had always treated Mr. Yi Xiao with such respect. It was all there. The ability to casually pull down meteorites from the sky is terrifying. Don't panic. After the meteorite falls, all Marines, put on enough handcuffs and come with me to apprehend the pirates. Captain. That's almost 300 people. Shouldn't we use the warships for long-range fire to stop them? It's all right. After the meteorite falls, most of those pirates will be dead, or severely injured. Meteorite? Of course. What else do you think Mr. Aisho would use pulling down a meteorite? What? Suddenly, all the Marines were stunned. Not only them, but the shipwrights and scientists still on deck were equally dumbfounded. What was that Marine saying? Mr. Aisho pulled down a meteorite? Without hesitation, everyone slowly turned their heads like robots, looking at Aisho, who was leisurely drinking tea with an innocent expression. Hiss. So Mr. Aisho is this terrifying? Just as everyone was petrified on the deck of the warship, about 500 meters away. Quick, we can see the warship. Charge, guys. Great. There are only about 20 people on deck, and half of them don't look like Marines. Why worry about anything else? Just charge up, kill them all, and get out of Cochin Island immediately. That's right. If we pull off this deal, we'll each get at least 1 billion berries. Ho ha ho ha. Kill. 10 pirate captains, each leading their crews, laughed and brandished their weapons as they raced towards the warship. However, Vent, who was also running wildly in the pirate group, suddenly sensed something was wrong. Something felt a pressure coming from above him, and he instinctively looked up. What he saw almost scared him to death. A meteorite was falling straight down towards them. Get out of the way. There wasn't time to react, he simply threw himself to the ground and shouted at the top of his lungs. But even before those 4 words could be finished, the meteorite had already fallen, like justice descending from the heavens. Boom. The enormous impact instantly overturned all the pirates. Those who happened to be right at the impact point were likely gone without a trace. Fortunately, the meteorite was only about 2 meters in size, and with Ishtar's gravity control, its falling speed was somewhat limited. Otherwise, this single meteorite would have blown the entire island away. In terms of world-destroying power, even Whitebird wouldn't stand a chance against Ishtar. The reason the meteorite Ishtar pulled down in the original story fell so slowly was because Ishtar controlled it. Otherwise, a larger meteorite, even if it hit the sea, would have been enough to destroy the world. More than 500 meters away from the warship, the area was completely shrouded in smoke and dust, making it impossible to see anything. However, even without seeing clearly, one could roughly guess the fate of those pirates. On the deck of the warship, everyone who witnessed this scene swallowed hard, unable to utter a sound for a moment. A full minute later, A marine's voice finally rang out. Are there any survivors? Chapter 134, Bucky's Nemesis. It has to be said, the people of the pirate world are incredibly resilient, like cockroaches. Despite the meteorite impact, over 20 pirates survived, including Vent. However, although they survived, their severe injuries rendered them completely immobile, requiring the Marines to shackle them. What happened here? Just then, a figure swiftly arrived, looking at the massive meteorite crater, the countless pirate corpses, and the Marines cleaning up the mess. Mamousaji was utterly bewildered. What had she missed? Hearing Mamousaji's voice, Vaughn quickly ran over. Vice Admiral Mamousaji. What's going on here? Reporting, Admiral. Nearly 300 pirates attempted to raid and seize the warship, but Mr. Aisho dealt with them. We are currently handling the aftermath. Mr. Aisho. Hearing this title, Mamousaji suddenly remembered Li Yan's words. Aisho is on the warship, so everything's fine. But with so many pirates, even he couldn't possibly deal with them so quickly, right? After all, there are quite a few with bounties over 50 million among them. I'm asking you, how did Aisho resolve that? He just drew his sword and swung it once, and then a meteorite fell from the sky, and that was it. To be honest, Vaughn didn't know how to explain it. Although he knew the meteorite was related to Aisho, he had no idea how Aisho pulled the meteorite down from the sky. So, it was really hard to explain, so he could only repeat what he had seen, and even imitated Aisho's actions at the time. Hiss. Swung his sword once, and then pulled a meteorite down from the sky? Speaking of which, when he came over earlier, he felt the ground shaking violently. Was that caused by the meteorite falling? Aisho? He could probably take on 10 of you, right? Mamousaji recalled what Li Yan had said to her when she arrived on the island. Could this guy really be telling the truth? If that's true, then wouldn't this Mr. Aisho be a combatant of admiral level? If Li Yan knew what Mamousaji was thinking at this moment, he would definitely tell her, congratulations, you guessed right, Aisho is indeed an admiral-level combatant. Just as Mamousaji was shocked by Aisho's combat power, in the forest in the center of the island, the battle between the two sides also reached a fever pitch. The Blood Wolf pirates truly lived up to their reputation as the strongest pirate crew among this generation of supernovas. The reason for saying this is not because they put Li Yan and the others in a tough fight, but simply because they hadn't collapsed after 3 minutes. This is quite rare in the first half of the Grand Line. At this moment, Luffy, Buggy, and Ann were each dealing with a supernova with a bounty of over 100 million. Although their opponents were all strong and had their own special abilities, things weren't too difficult for them. But the ordinary Marines didn't have such a big advantage. Li Yan's Marines were indeed strong, but the Blood Wolf pirates, besides the 3 core officers with bounties over 100 million, also had several ordinary officers with bounties in the tens of millions. These individuals posed a significant threat to ordinary Marines, even those under Li Yan whose strength reached 100. If it weren't for Najiko controlling the situation and intervening occasionally, there would certainly have been casualties by now. Little girl, you've been trying to touch me since just now. I don't consider myself handsome, so I guess you're a devil fruit user. And to activate your ability, you need to touch me, right? In the battlefield where Ann was, after a brief exchange, Capo stared intently at the female Marine in front of him and said. However, Ann completely ignored him, flicking her hands to change the grip of her 2 short blades to horizontal one, and instantly activated her shave skill, leaping forward again. If you thought Ann knew nothing but devil fruits, you would be sorely mistaken. It's important to remember that in the original story, she was capable of fighting Zoro, 2 years later, with swordsmanship for a considerable time, making her a true swordsman. Furthermore, after joining the 18th branch, she dedicated herself to grueling training in the gravity chamber every day. Now, she's definitely not weaker than him 3 years later, 2 years after the original story, and might even be stronger physically. The previous battle was simply because Ann hadn't adapted her fighting style. She was still clinging to her old habits, using her dual blades to restrain her opponent and then looking for an opportunity to use her devil fruit ability to finish them off in one blow. However, she forgot that she was no longer the same person she used to be. Against a pirate like Capo, there's no need for such a complicated approach. Simply relying on physical skills and swordsmanship to overpower him is enough. This change in fighting style made Capo realize how difficult it was to handle her. After abandoning the use of his devil fruit and focusing all his energy on swordsmanship, Capo was immediately overwhelmed by her fierce sword techniques. Not far away, just over 20 meters away, Buggy was facing a pirate with a bounty of 148 million, Poison Man Bed. Speaking of which, this guy's devil fruit ability is quite effective against Buggy. If there's one weakness in Buggy right now, it's probably that he needs to touch the target to activate either his crush or decompose abilities. But this guy in front of him, however, is someone he can't touch, which is quite a headache. Paramecia type Venom Fruit. Unlike Magellan's Paramecia type Venom Fruit, Bed's Venom Fruit doesn't release toxins externally. Instead, when activating the fruit's ability, he transforms himself into Poison Man, a poison man whose entire body, including his skin, is filled with deadly poison. Anyone who touches Bed's body when his ability is activated will be directly invaded by his toxins and die within seconds. Moreover, the poison on his body wasn't just potent, it was also highly corrosive. So, don't think that wearing gloves will make you invincible. At the very start of the battle, Buggy was prepared to use his crush technique to end the fight, but the problem was, the moment he touched him, he sensed something was wrong, immediately pulled back, and threw his right glove on the ground. Only then did Buggy notice that the purple toxin was corroding his discarded glove, and within seconds, it was completely rotten. Buggy felt a wave of fear. If he had been any slower in pulling his hand back, or hadn't immediately removed the glove, the consequences would have been unimaginable. However, although he had escaped death, how could he defeat his opponent without being able to touch him? Although his current ultimate technique was touted as the ability to decompose everything, he had never actually tried to decompose something like poison. Chapter 135 Luffy vs. Ibsen. After much deliberation, Buggy finally gave up, not daring to try and see if the so-called decomposition of all things could break down the toxins. Since that's the case, then I have no choice but to use my ultimate technique. Looking at the poisonous man, Bede, Buggy's expression became unusually serious. In fact, Najiko had been watching from the very beginning of Buggy and Bede's fight, and was prepared to step in if Buggy couldn't handle it. After all, as a user of the Rumble fruit, poisonous people were meaningless to her. Now, when Najiko saw Buggy's serious expression and heard him say he was going to use his ultimate technique, she became interested. She knew about the 4-in-1 decomposition of all things technique, and it certainly deserved the title of an ultimate technique, but she really didn't know that Buggy had other ultimate techniques. But the next second, Buggy's action stunned everyone. He stretched out his hands to the sides, throwing off the cloak that covered him, thus revealing what was hidden inside. Those were pistols, also prototyped by Levin and his team in the science department, but not yet in mass production, and only 10 had been made. But counting the pistols hidden in Buggy's navy cloak, there were indeed 10. It seemed this guy had taken all 10 pistols from the lab. Gun? Seeing this, Bed was also bewildered. I thought you were talking about some kind of secret technique. Did you really think guns would be useful to a pirate with a bounty of over 100 million? Don't be ridiculous. While he admitted that the Navy's firearms were powerful, easily overwhelming ordinary pirates, and even posing a significant threat to some pirates with bounties of tens of millions, who is he? He was one of this year's supernovas, one of only 8 pirates with a bounty over 100 million. He couldn't necessarily withstand bullets head-on, but as long as it wasn't a concentrated barrage from all directions, dodging them was entirely possible. Looking at the 10 pistols Buggy revealed inside his cloak, Bed wore a disdainful expression. Chop to pieces. Split your whole body. With Buggy's low shout, the chop-to-piece fruit instantly activated its basic power, splitting the user's body into dozens of pieces, all of which, except for the feet, floated in the air. This split was different from Buggy's previous ones. It wasn't simply disassembling the body by parts, but by shape, creating dozens of pieces. For example, the body was split into 20 pieces by cross-section, looking like large slices of meat. If you put these slices on a metal plate, it would be incredibly tempting. Then, each of the 10 fingers on both hands was split off individually, and the other parts were also split in some strange ways, totaling nearly 40. Just as Najiko was wondering what Buggy was doing, her eyes widened in the next instant. The split body parts, grouped in sets of 4, were setting up the pistols hidden inside the cloak. How were they set up? It was simple. The flesh pieces splitting off from his body clamped the pistol from both sides, and another piece of the split body supported it from below to stabilize the muzzle. Finally, a finger slipped through the trigger. This maneuver stunned everyone. In just a moment of hesitation, 10 pistols had surrounded Bader from 10 different directions. Fragmentation crossfire. Preparations complete, Bucky shouted again, and then the 10 fingers, each on a trigger, slammed down. Bang 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 bang. And that wasn't all. Each magazine of this new pistol held 8 rounds. So, the 10 fingers continued to frantically pull the triggers. Bang 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 bang. In 3 seconds, 8 volleys, 80 bullets, fired from 10 different directions, created a crossfire that left Bede with no way to dodge, turning him into a beehive. Although Bede's physical skills were decent, dodging frontal shots wasn't a problem. But this crossfire from different directions was something he simply couldn't avoid. Furthermore, his physique and devil fruit ability couldn't withstand the bullets head-on, so his beehive-like fate was inevitable. This even works? Not far away, Najiko, who had been watching the battle closely, was truly amazed. She genuinely hadn't expected that such a ridiculous way of using a devil fruit ability could actually be effective. And so, Bede became the first supernova to fall in the Blood Wolf Pirates. At the same time, on another part of the battlefield, Luffy was also constantly fighting a pirate. His opponent was Ebsen, with a bounty of 162 million. Unlike the other 3, Ebsen wasn't a devil fruit user, he was a specialist in physical combat. In terms of pure physical skill, he was undoubtedly the strongest among the 8 supernovas, even surpassing Garfield. It was precisely because of his exceptional physical prowess and physique that he could hold his own against Luffy, making it difficult to determine a winner. You're really strong. You're not bad either. Although you have the power of a devil fruit, your physical skills are truly impressive. I'll have to get serious from here on out, or I'll get extra training when we get back. That's right, let's end the warm-up here. Ebsen nodded in agreement. In truth, although the two had fought for a while, neither had actually gone all out. For example, Luffy had only used the 6 powers shave a few times, and he hadn't even used the armament haki he had awakened before setting sail. Shave. Gum Gum Finger Pistol. In a mere instant, Luffy appeared not far from Ebsen, utilizing the elasticity and stretching properties of the Gum Gum fruit, combined with the 6 powers of the Navy he had learned, to unleash an upgraded version of the machine gun attack. While maintaining the original rapid punches and wide-range attacks, he incorporated the penetrating power of the finger pistol, making the entire move even more terrifying. However, Ebsen, whose bounty of 162 million was earned solely through physical prowess, was no ordinary opponent. Since you want to attack from the surface, I'll attack from a single point 80% power, explosive punch. Concentrating his power in his right arm, his muscles bulged, making Ebsen's right arm appear almost twice as thick, extremely disproportionate to his body, somewhat resembling Luffy using Gear 3rd, though not as exaggerated. After all, Ebsen didn't possess the Gum Gum fruit. But even so, it was already terrifying. With a single punch, the air seemed to be torn apart, even producing sounds like explosions. No wonder Ebsen called it the explosive punch. One attack has a wide range and strong piercing power, while the other is a single-point attack with terrifying power. In the next instant, their attacks collided fiercely. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136: The Unpredictable Tempest Kick. Boom. A deafening roar erupted from the point of impact, sending up a cloud of dust that obscured the view of what had happened. A draw. Najiko muttered to herself from a distance. While others couldn't see clearly, Najiko, with her observation haki illuminating the entire battlefield, saw it all perfectly. Luffy's attack was blocked midway by Ebsen, unable to advance an inch. However, Ebsen's concentrated, single-target punch also failed to completely shatter Luffy's offensive. It could be said that the two had once again demonstrated a near-equal fighting strength, which greatly surprised Najiko. Although Luffy wasn't considered particularly strong in her eyes, he was still among the top 5 of the 18 branches, while Ebsen was merely a member of the Blood Wolf Pirates, not their captain. Looking at it this way, Ebsen was indeed quite powerful. However, Najiko wasn't too worried, as he knew Luffy hadn't used his full strength yet. Looks like I can't beat you in your normal state. So you're saying you haven't used your full strength? That's not perfect, neither have I. Is that so? Perfect, let's start the 3rd round. Come on, don't hold back, go all out next time. No way. Luffy rejected Ebsen's suggestion without hesitation. It wasn't that Luffy looked down on Ebsen or wasn't going to use his full strength, but rather that he had been warned by Li Yan. If he could defeat an opponent in his normal state, he wasn't allowed to use Gear Second. If he could defeat them in Gear Second, he wasn't allowed to use Gear Third. Otherwise, he'd be punished by cleaning the branch's toilets for a month. Keep in mind, the 18th branch now has far more than just a few dozen people. With the Marines from various East Blue branches undergoing training, there are currently over 2,000 people stationed at the 18th branch. Being punished by cleaning toilets for a month would be unbearable. Moreover, Li Yan was doing this for Luffy's own good. Although the gravity training room and Thor's systematic training had greatly improved Luffy's strength, and he had even developed Gear Second ahead of schedule, placing his overall strength between the Marineford War and the 2-year time skip in the main storyline, Gear Second, Gear Third, and Gear Fourth, while capable of significantly boosting combat power in a short time, also had strong side effects. Each use could even damage the user's life essence, reducing lifespan, a point mentioned in the original work. To prevent Luffy from using Gear Second as a regular technique, Li Yan was limiting him in this way. After all, the thing Luffy and Buggy feared most right now was cleaning toilets. Gear Second. Having confirmed that he couldn't defeat his opponent in his normal state, Luffy activated Gear Second. His blood began to circulate rapidly, internal problems surged, and even steam rose from his skin. Not far away, Nezuko, witnessing the scene, had already activated the power of the Rumble fruit, ready to unleash lightning upon Ebsen at any moment, instantly killing him. Nezuko, if Luffy enters Gear Second mode and hasn't defeated his opponent within a minute, you act immediately. The longer he uses this technique, the greater the damage to his body. Within a minute, it's still manageable and can be healed, but after a minute, it will cause significant permanent and irreversible damage. Nezuko's observation haki locked tightly onto Ebsen, a few flickering lightning crackling within her control. Li Yan's words flashed through her mind again. At this moment, if she wanted, the next second would be Ebsen's death, without question. Shave. Huh? Luffy suddenly vanished, startling Ebsen. He knew about the shave move from the 6 powers of the Navy, having encountered Navy personnel using it before, and having seen Luffy use it several times. The problem was, whether it was the Navy he'd faced before or Luffy just now, he could always keep up with their use of shave. But now? Luffy vanished from his sight with a single shave, and he hadn't even seen where he moved. If I can't see him, then I won't look. Full power, full body defense. Taking a deep breath and letting out a low shout, Ebsen unleashed his most prized technique, his full body defense, relying solely on his physical body for protection. His muscles had long been trained to be like steel. With full power, even bullets could be deflected. Perhaps even Corona's 18 powers bullets would only leave slight marks, unable to penetrate. However, Luffy didn't rush in and unleash his attacks as he expected, instead maintaining a distance of over 10 meters from Ebsen. Gum Gum Jet Axe, Tempest Kick. His right leg slammed upwards, stretching to over 10 meters using the elasticity of rubber, then swung downwards with a powerful downward strike. Yes, a downward strike. Not the stomp of the original move. This was a technique Luffy developed by combining his axe with a Tempest Kick. As his 10-meter-long right leg swung down, a white streak, also over 10 meters long, was instantly released, hurtling towards Ebsen at incredible speed. Compared to his ordinary Tempest Kick, Luffy's attack was at least 3 times more powerful. Aside from lacking an elemental attribute, its destructive force alone was almost comparable to Li Yan's Flying Slash. It's said that the longer the leg, the greater the power of the Tempest Kick, but is there anyone in this world with legs longer than Luffy's? This was a Tempest Kick beyond reason. Seeing the white streak hurtling towards him, Ebsen couldn't break into a full defensive stance and dodge in time. He could only cross his arms in front of him, preparing to take the hit head-on. The next instant, that terrifying white streak slammed into him. The immense impact propelled Ebsen backward at high speed, causing him to scream. Even with all his might, he couldn't withstand the force and was slid backward at high speed for over 20 meters until his back slammed into a large tree with a diameter of 3 meters, finally bringing him to a stop. The massive tree, unable to withstand the weight, snapped and crashed to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Half a minute later, as the dust settled, revealing Ebsen, everyone noticed that he remained motionless, still in a defensive posture with his arms crossed and knees slightly bent. It's over. Dozens of meters away, Najiko sensed the situation with her observation haki and muttered to herself, while the lightning gathering in her right hand gradually dissipated. Yes, it was over. Although Ebsen was still standing, and although his face still revealed a crazed expression, the life force had vanished from his body. Just as many had paused their fighting due to what had just happened, a figure suddenly flew over and crashed heavily to the ground, not far from Ebsen. When the pirates saw the figure lying on the ground, eyes rolled back, unconscious, their eyes widened in shock. Who else could it be but strategist Capo? Chapter 137 When Mimosagi is shameless. The three top officers of the Blood Wolf pirates, Capo, Bede, and Ebsen, were all lying on the ground, 2 dead and 1 crippled. Most of the other ordinary officers and crew members had also fallen, thanks to the occasional attacks from Li Yan's elite marines and snipers like Usopp. As for casualties, there were indeed injuries, and quite a few, as several of the enemy's lower-ranking officers were pirates with bounties of tens of millions. However, with Najiko watching over them, there were no deaths. In short, only Li Yan and Garfield's side remained engaged in a truly fierce battle. Ding. Host has gained 1% proficiency in observation haki, current LV, 30, 0.00%. Ding. Host has gained 0.02% proficiency in observation haki, current LV, 30, 0.03%. Ding. Host has gained 0.03% proficiency in observation haki, current LV, 30, 0.05%. The constant notifications in his mind caused Li Yan's lips to twitch slightly. I've only leveled up 2 times, and my proficiency has already dropped so much? And Luffy and the others are all done for, while I, the governor of the East Blue, am still dragging my feet. It's really unacceptable. Blood Wolf Garfield, it seems your subordinates have all been taken down. HMPH, a bunch of trash. Once I've dealt with you, I can easily slaughter the rest. Garfield gritted his teeth. He himself hadn't expected that in just 4 or 5 minutes, Capo and the other 2 would all be defeated. However, as long as he could take down this rare admiral and then kill the other marines before Mimosagi returned, he could still escape unscathed. As for killing Mimosagi, he'd forget about it this time. After all, 2 of his 3 core officers were dead and 1 was crippled, and he couldn't possibly be her match in a one-on-one fight. White Wolf Fruit, Werewolf Mode. Thinking this, Garfield knew he couldn't delay any longer. With a low shout, his entire body began to change. Garfield grew taller, his limbs thicker, and he even sprouted thick white fur all over his body, resembling a werewolf from some of Li Yan's previous works. Seeing Garfield's transformation, Li Yan immediately understood. It was similar to Rob Lucci's transformation in the original story, significantly increasing his strength, defense, and speed. However, the White Wolf Fruit's abilities were clearly more versatile in combat than Rob Lucci's Leopard Man form. After all, even in werewolf form, he could still control his 7 wolf cubs, using them to support and cover him in battle. Death Bite. After transforming, seizing an opening after one of the wolf cubs attacked, Garfield immediately joined in and unleashed his signature move on Li Yan. With the Devil Fruit's enhancement, his bite force reached nearly 2,000 kilograms, and combined with his 2 rows of terrifyingly sharp teeth after the transformation, even his strongest fighter, Ebsen, would have a large chunk of flesh torn off if hit. At this moment, Lin Fan, having just dodged the attacks of the other 7, seemed to stiffen for a moment, unable to immediately evade the attack. He could only raise his right and left hands in front of him, which gave Garfield a sense of opportunity. Since that's the case, then I'll take your left hand. The blood-red maw suddenly opened, biting down directly at Li Yan's left arm. However, armament haki, harden. From an observer's perspective, it looked like Garfield had bitten into Li Yan's left arm, causing them great concern. But from Li Yan's position, directly in front of Garfield, one could clearly see Garfield's increasingly distorted face, and even the 2 rows of sharp teeth biting into Li Yan's left hand. It was impossible for him to bite through. To be honest, Garfield even felt like his teeth were about to break, as if they were about to hit a block of iron. Flying slash. Before Garfield could even release his grip, Li Yan unleashed a powerful slash from his right hand, striking Garfield squarely in the chest. Garfield was sent flying, crashing into 2 large trees. Only then did everyone notice that Li Yan's left hand, where Garfield had bitten him, was now completely black, even gleaming with a metallic sheen. Shave. Finger pistol. Thud. A black finger pierced the chest of one of the wolf cubs before anyone could react. Then, Li Yan vanished again. Whether it was a finger pistol, a tempest kick, a slash, or even a simple punch, in less than 10 seconds, all 7 pirates controlled by Garfield were lying on the ground. These pirates with bounties around 50 million were no challenge for Li Yan now. Meanwhile, as the dust settled, Garfield's figure gradually emerged. Gone was his previous high spirits, replaced by a look of utter dejection. He sat on the ground, leaning against a broken tree trunk, the deep, bone-revealing sword wound on his chest almost reaching his waist particularly striking. When he saw his 7 men lying on the ground, their fates unknown, his expression grew increasingly desperate. With such strength, why had he fought him for so long, seemingly suppressed and forced to desperately dodge, unable to retaliate? Why was this person only a minor admiral? He should at least be among the top ranks of ordinary vice admirals, if not an elite one. Who are you? The Admiral of the East China Sea, Li Yan. You were the one who killed Talus, Li Yan? Is there a problem? Hearing this, Li Yan raised an eyebrow. No problem, absolutely no problem. With your strength, taking down a piece of trash like Talus is a piece of cake. As for me, I was laughing at Talus for being killed by some nobody from the East Blue, but I never thought I'd follow in his footsteps so quickly. I couldn't even block one of your serious moves. This is ridiculous. Ha ha ha, cough cough. After a few self-deprecating laughs, Garfield coughed up another mouthful of blood, along with some internal organs completely shattered by the destructive sword intent. It seemed he didn't have much time left. Just then, a figure flew over swiftly and landed right next to Li Yan. Is this over? The person who came was none other than Mimausaji, who had rushed to the warship at full speed and then rushed back again. Looking at the scene before her, she was completely dumbfounded. What was she planning before? To take advantage of this trip to Korchin Island to kill a few more pirates and then confiscate their valuables to use to upgrade Li Yan's warship? But what was the result? He ran to the warship, but the pirates had already been dealt with by Yixio. Okay, then he'd come back and take down Blood Wolf Garfield, but he was a step too late. The Blood Wolf pirates had also been wiped out by Li Yan. All he'd done was run around the whole time, gaining nothing, a complete waste of time. Wait, Blood Wolf isn't dead yet, is he? So, if he finishes him off now, that head should be his, right? He immediately pushed Li Yan aside, shouting watch out. As if he'd discovered Garfield was about to make a sneak attack. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he swiftly drew his golden spear from his waist, unleashing a pink streak straight at the immobilized Garfield. For the sake of the belly needed to modify the warship, Mimausaji was no longer willing to care about saving face. Chapter 138 Trying to swindle my money? No way. A moment of silence fell over the scene, everyone sharing the same question, what's going on? Even Mimausaji herself was bewildered. Why had she acted so impulsively? How was she going to explain this? No, even if she couldn't explain it, she had to force an explanation. She slowly sheathed the golden kunlo and turned to look at Li Yan, who was equally stunned. Are you alright? I just noticed he was about to ambush you? Oh. Looking at Mimausaji's seemingly concerned expression, Li Yan was even more confused. Garfield was going to ambush me? This was no joke. That guy was practically on his last legs, unable to even lift a finger, and he'd been using observation haki to protect him the whole time. How come he hadn't noticed him trying to ambush him? With a hint of suspicion, Li Yan looked at Mimausaji and then keenly noticed her eyes flicker. What on earth was this woman up to? Never mind her for now, it's all over anyway. Besides, it's just killing a pirate who was already on his last legs. Whether he takes his own life or Mimausaji finishes him off doesn't matter. Anyway, he'd already earned the merit points for defeating Garfield before Mimausaji finished him off. With a slight sigh, Li Yan thought to himself, then ordered the Marines to collect valuables from the pirate ships. 10 minutes later, on the west coast of Korchin Island, the Marines were unloading boxes from the pirate ships, registering and gathering them. Li Yan returned to his warship to enjoy tea with Yixio. However, Rear Admiral. Just then, Vaughn jogged over, saluted, and shouted loudly. What is it? Reporting, Rear Admiral, we found 380 million berries in cash on the Blood Wolf pirates, along with a large amount of other valuables, worth at least 500 million berries. It seems the Blood Wolf pirates have done quite a few bad things. Nodding, Leanne said. These are pirates, they've never known production. So, where did this enormous fortune come from? The answer is simple, robbery. As for whose it came from? Either merchant ships encountered at sea, or civilians. The probability of it coming from the Navy or pirates is extremely small. However, Leanne noticed that Vaughn was still standing to the side, looking hesitant, as if he had something else to say. What else is it? This. If you don't want to talk about it, then don't. No, Rear Admiral, regarding the valuables on the Blood Wolf pirate's ship, Vice Admiral Mamousaji has confiscated them all, claiming she was the one who killed Blood Wolf Garfield. What? Hearing Vaughn's words, Leanne almost spat out a tea he had just drunk. So that's what happened. I was wondering why she insisted on finishing Garfield off before he died. So that's what it was all about. This woman is really something, she can even come up with such a shameless method. It's alright anyway. She just wants this money so I can upgrade the warship. The upgrade fee is whatever she wants, right? I'll just give her a little extra and make her pay it back with interest. How, trying to swindle me? No way. Rear Admiral, what should we do? Don't worry about it, just give it to her. Huh? What huh? Get back to work. Finish the cleanup quickly so we can set sail sooner. Yes, Rear Admiral. Although somewhat confused, not understanding why his Rear Admiral had given up without even a fight, he knew it was a matter between officers, something he couldn't and shouldn't interfere with. So he turned and left the warship to continue working. Rear Admiral, a group of pirates is approaching, and one of them is very strong. Just as Leanne was about to continue enjoying his tea, Najiko, who had been standing behind him, suddenly spoke up. This young lady's observation haki is quite impressive. The range she can cover is almost as good as mine. Before Leanne could speak, Aisho spoke up first. He was genuinely surprised. While his observation haki wasn't at its peak, it was certainly top tier. He had only just sensed this distance, yet Najiko had also sensed it. What did this mean? It meant that this young lady's observation haki was almost on par with his own. Mr. Aisho is too modest. Najiko's range is much greater than others of the same level because the rumble fruit enhances her observation haki. To be honest, Najiko's observation haki hasn't even reached the intermediate level. Hearing this, Aisho was also somewhat taken aback. The rumble fruit has this function? Well, after all, the rumble fruit hadn't appeared on the sea for hundreds of years. Apart from some ancient records, most people were actually quite unfamiliar with this Logia-type devil fruit, which was said to have the strongest attack power. After briefly explaining to Chisho, Leanne stood up and looked in the direction Najiko had indicated. Sure enough, a ship was approaching several kilometers away. However, this ship wasn't flying a pirate flag, but Leanne didn't doubt Najiko's words. After all, a pirate flag could be left unfurled, but the people on board couldn't escape Najiko's observation haki. Picking up his binoculars, Leanne looked at the ship and frowned slightly. How could it be this guy? Does Brother Leanne know who's coming? Yes, Diamante, one of Doflamingo's top executives from the 7 Warlords of the Sea. The 7 Warlords of the Sea. Hearing Leanne's words, Ichisho's expression changed slightly. After all, the 7 Warlords of the Sea had always been a distorted force in his mind. In the original story, one of the reasons Ichisho joined the Navy and became an admiral was to abolish the 7 Warlords of the Sea. This showed how much he disliked this force. By the way, Brother Leanne, I seem to have some clues about what the 7 Warlords of the Sea's officers are doing here. What do you mean, Mr. Yixio? Among those pirates who tried to seize the warship, one of them claimed to be a subordinate of the 7 Warlords of the Sea, Doflamingo, and even threatened Brother Vaughn to release him. Wow, is that so? What are you planning to do, Brother Leanne? Release him? Yixio grinned and asked with a smile. Clearly, this question was also a test for Leanne. After all, he had an agreement with Leanne to observe Leanne's actions to ultimately decide whether to join the East Blue 18th branch. Leanne naturally understood that Yixio was testing him. Don't joke around. Attacking a Navy warship and expecting it to release someone? That's impossible. What if they take forceful action? That's perfect. We'll arrest this top officer as well and lock him up and impel down. Even if this matter goes to the fleet admiral, I'll still be in the right. Leanne said with a disdainful look. Honestly, He really hoped Diamante would go berserk, so he'd have a chance, and a better reason, to capture him or kill him. After all, even the 7 warlords of the sea aren't allowed to attack the Marines. If he could even get Doflamingo to personally lead an attack on the 18 branches to save Diamante, that would be even better. Chapter 139 When arms dealers get an education from the arms industry. About 10 meters away from the warship, Diamante stood at the bow, scrutinizing the vessel. It was indeed unlike anything he'd ever seen before, from the hull design to the massive cannons and the various unidentified weapon platforms. It seemed Capo's words were true. But where was Capo? Didn't Doflamingo say he'd led 10 pirate crews to ambush and seize the warship while Mamausagi and her crew were on the island dealing with Bloodwolf Garfield? Why wasn't he there? I heard Vice Admiral Mamausagi is here. Where is she? A Vice Admiral? He's on the island dealing with the Bloodwolf pirates. What business do you have with him? Li Yan, also standing at the bow, countered. As for Mamausagi, he'd already had her temporarily hidden when he saw Diamante's ship approaching. After all, how could he fish if Mamausagi were there? Although she didn't know what Li Yan was up to, under his threat of not helping to modify the warship even if he paid her, Mamausagi had compromised. This answer reassured Diamante. If Mamausagi were here, it would be really difficult for him to act. Leaving aside whether he could even seize the warship, his chances of winning in a one-on-one fight were slim. After all, a candidate for admiral was no joke. Right now, the enemy warship only had a rear admiral and a few dozen marines, practically insignificant. If he acted quickly enough and left no survivors, he could seize the warship before Mamausagi discovered him, without a trace. I'm here to see Capo. I heard he was captured, and I'm here to get him back. Capo is indeed here with me. He led an attack on the warship and is currently imprisoned, so I can't give him to you. Having made up his mind, Diamante initially intended to find any excuse to act. That way, even if Mamausagi returned midway and he failed to seize the warship, he would have enough reason to prevent Mamausagi from doing anything to him, right? So, no matter where Capo was, he would just insist that he had been captured. But unexpectedly, the other party admitted it immediately. Capo is a member of our Donquixote family. According to the Shichibuke agreement, the Navy has no right to arrest or detain him. Even if he is a Shichibuke, he is not allowed to attack the Navy. If he does, I have grounds to arrest or even kill him. It seems there's no room for negotiation? It's a matter of principle, so naturally there's no room for negotiation. Li Yanai spoke sternly from the bow of the warship. However, what he was thinking at that moment was this: you idiot, I've given you the reason, why aren't you making a move? What are you blabbering about? Don't you know how many villains die from talking too much? Fine, even if you don't talk much, you're doomed today. Anyway, hurry up and make your move, I can't wait. Since your navy is being unreasonable and insists on violating the agreement to attack our Shichibuke, then don't blame me. Get Capo back for me. Diamante turned to Lao Ji and the other 4 and said, while also giving the 4 officers a wink. Seeing this, the 4 immediately understood. Capo's life or death didn't matter, the key was this warship. Therefore, once the battle begins, the objective is not to rescue Capo, but to wipe out the Marines on the warship as quickly as possible. The 4 exchanged glances, nodded, and then each called to their subordinates, preparing to jump directly onto Li Yan's warship to fight. Speaking of Diamante, he is no simple character. Even under Doflamingo, he is the leader of the strongest fighting force among the 4 major divisions, the Diamond Army, which also has the most officers of any special combat unit. Compared to the Bloodwolf pirates, he is far stronger. But would Li Yan be afraid? Obviously not. Just look at who's on Li Yan's ship right now. Even Doflamingo himself would have to kneel down. Of course, dealing with Diamante doesn't require Mamausagi and Aisho to lift a finger. As for the Diamond Army officers, they are definitely excellent training targets for Luffy and the others. At the same time, in a cabin of the warship, Mamausagi, who had listened to the entire conversation between the 2 sides, also looked astonished. Was Li Yan preparing to attack the 7 warlords of the sea? Should he go out and stop him? After all, Diamante was quite strong, and the 7 warlords were a troublesome matter. However, after Mamausagi remembered the matter of modifying the warship, she immediately abandoned the idea. Forget it, she'd just pretend she didn't know. Anyway, with Aisho around, nothing would happen. Attack! With Diamante's shout, Lao Ji and the other 3 led the way, followed by dozens of pirates who leaped towards Li Yan's warship. However, what awaited them was fire. This warship wasn't just equipped with cannons, it also had more than 10 machine gun turrets for attacking aerial targets. Although originally intended to target Devil Fruit users with flight abilities, these machine gun turrets weren't limited to firing upwards, they could also fire horizontally. The rate of fire, hundreds of bullets per minute, transformed the bullets into streaks of light, like whips, sweeping towards the pirates. This scene stunned Diamante. If you were to ask what the Quixote family's main business is, it would undoubtedly be arms dealing. However, even they had never seen such a powerful machine gun before. Nevertheless, the Quixote family is a powerful force among the 7 warlords of the sea, and they operate in the New World. Most of their officers possess haki. The moment the machine guns fired, Lao Ji and the others sensed it using observation haki. They dodged while simultaneously using armament haki to defend themselves. They thought it was just bullets, and that armament haki would be enough to stop them. But when these extremely powerful bullets actually struck them, they realized it hurt terribly. This was power that firearms shouldn't have. After all, firearms in the pirate world are still in the early stages of flintlock, and the bullets are round lead pellets. Hitting a body covered in armament haki, they don't feel much. But these bullets hitting them were incredibly painful. Even though it hurt, they had to endure it. Once they were on the enemy warship, fighting alongside the Marines, they wouldn't have to worry about the enemy continuing to mow them down with those terrifying weapons. With their hands crossed to protect their heads, braving the hail of bullets, the 4 finally reached the foredeck of the warship. However, when they looked back, they realized that of the more than 50 men who had jumped with them, only a mere 7 had made it to the deck. One of them had even managed to jump over, but he had been hit by several bullets and was on the verge of death. These were the elite of their square army. Seeing this, Diamante, still standing at the bow of his ship, felt his heart bleed. Chapter 140, Several hundred million more gone. Diamante admitted that these naval weapons had indeed surprised him, and were indeed very powerful. His own blocky army had suffered heavy losses as a result. But that was the end of it. While these weapons were overwhelming for ordinary pirates, they weren't effective against those skilled in haki. Besides, Lao Ji and his group were already on deck, rendering these weapons useless. With a powerful leap, Diamante also jumped over. Of course, while in the air, he suffered the same fate as Lao Ji and his group. Machine gun fire erupted, countless bullets raining down on him. However, Diamante completely ignored it, activating the power of his float fruit, transforming his body into a nearly thin sheet of cloth, as if he had gone from a 3-dimensional being to a 2-dimensional one, dodging all the bullets, then returning to his original form and landing steadily on the foredeck of the warship. So this is the float fruit? It's really bizarre, feels like a multi-purpose version of the wash fruit. Li Yan was speechless as he watched Diamante's physical changes. Leave this rear admiral to me, you guys take care of the other Marines, and hurry up. Don't worry. Lao Ji and the other 4 nodded and rushed towards the Marines on the deck, while Diamante slowly drew his rapier, his eyes fixed on Li Yan. I have to admit, your new weapons are indeed powerful, but that's only against ordinary people. Sword, serpent sword. With a low shout, Diamante suddenly launched an attack, thrusting at Li Yan. If it were someone else, they might not take this seriously. After all, Diamante's thrust speed wasn't very fast, and it wouldn't be difficult to dodge. But Li Yan knew that the key to this move wasn't speed, but his float fruit ability. After transforming his rapier into a cloth-like form, he would launch unpredictable attacks, or suddenly restore the sword's hardness while the opponent dodged, achieving a double thrust. Frankly, this move is difficult to counter with swordsmanship. It's like Buggy's split fruit, which has a certain restraint on sword techniques. Therefore, the best approach is to use offense as defense. Flying slash, horizontal slash. Diamante, charging forward, stared wide-eyed at the black and white streaks of light hurtling towards him. He had assumed this was just an ordinary rear admiral, someone he could easily kill with a single move. That's why he used his serpent sword from such a distance. But what happened? The opponent unleashed a flying slash, forcing him to dodge and retreat, unable to continue his advance and use the serpent sword. Most importantly, this slash was imbued with sword intent. As Doflamingo's strongest swordsman, and one who was very close to becoming a great swordsman, Diamante was acutely aware of the sword intent carried in Li Yan's slash. He dared not be careless any longer. Bullfighting cloak. He pulled his cloak forward, completely covering himself. Don't mistake this for an ordinary cloak. It was actually a cloak made of steel by Diamante using the power of the float fruit. Although it looked like an ordinary cloak, even its weight was similar. It actually possessed the hardness of steel, impervious even to cannonballs. Of course, the cannon here refers to the old-fashioned muzzle-loading smoothbore cannon of this world. Clang. With a loud bang, Diamante's figure was sent flying backward, sliding several meters across the deck before stopping. However, judging from the cloak's intact appearance, it seemed to have completely withstood the attack without injury. It's useless. Even if a swordsman possesses the ability to cut through iron, he still can't cut through my cloak. Diamante confidently declared, flicking his right hand to release the cloak and revealing himself once more. Although the cloak was actually made of steel, thanks to his float fruit ability, it possessed not only the hardness of steel but also the softness of cloth. Hardness and softness should be two completely contradictory things, yet these contradictory characteristics coexisted on Diamante's cloak. Therefore, even a swordsman, even one who could cut through steel, would find it difficult to cut through his cloak. What's so funny? Having finished his boast, Diamante noticed a hint of mockery in Li Yan's expression, which angered him. However, Li Yan ignored him and pointed to his cheek. What did that mean? The next second, Diamante suddenly felt a chill on his right cheek, and his expression changed drastically. A red line gradually appeared on his cheek, and a trace of bright red blood seeped out. This is impossible. Nothing is impossible, and besides, you don't seem to have noticed anything else? Hearing this, Diamante seemed to realize something and suddenly lowered his head, then his eyes widened in disbelief. His clothes were torn in at least a dozen places. In other words, his bullfighting cloak hadn't completely blocked the opponent's slashes, quite a few sword energies had penetrated the cloak and attacked him. Diamante was a very arrogant person, and at this moment, he felt as if he had been humiliated, especially after he had just put on a show. This feeling of humiliation was even stronger. He immediately raised his rapier high. Boy, take this. Flying slash isn't something only you can do. Half moon. Funeral. The rapier swung down suddenly, and a streak of sword energy swept directly towards Li Yan, skimming the deck. The powerful wave of sword energy it generated was nothing like that of an ordinary swordsman. I Fang. Just then, a classic Chinese curse suddenly burst from Li Yan's mouth. It wasn't that Diamante's move surprised him, it was just, why did he have to execute a flying slash so close to the ground? Look at this deck, sliced open like tofu. This is atom wood. One slash and it's worth 200 to 300 million worth of atom wood is ruined. What a joke. More importantly, he couldn't dodge. If he did, the ship's cabin behind him would probably be cleaved in two, resulting in huge losses. Gritting his teeth, Li Yan had no choice but to go for it, unleashing his own flying slash to meet Diamante's attack. The two sharp streaks collided in midair, the resulting sword energy exploding with a deafening roar, blasting a large hole in the foredeck of the warship. Seeing this, Li Yan's heart bled. Another few hundred million gone. As expected, the swordsman's destructive power is too great. It's better to deal with him as soon as possible, otherwise this warship might fall apart. Chapter 141 The Only Sword Skill. Not only was it the battlefield between Li Yan and Diamante, but the entire foredeck of the warship was now a mess. Although atom wood was sturdy, it was still wishful thinking to think it could withstand the swordsman's strikes, or the physical techniques of a strong fighter, or the attacks of a devil fruit ability. Less than a minute into the fight, it was already a mess, riddled with cracks and holes. Judging by this, the entire deck would have to be replaced when they got back. Determined to end the battle quickly, Li Yan's aura suddenly shifted. He was about to use his trump card, the only sword move he hadn't used in actual combat since learning it. Basic attack. Flying slash, white tiger. With a low shout, his right hand swung down fiercely. The movement was exactly the same as when he usually unleashed the flying slash. But this time, Li Yan didn't unleash the usual two-colored streak. Instead, he unleashed a ferocious tiger outlined in black and white, baring its fangs and claws, pouncing towards Diamante with the aura of the king of beasts. With its predominantly white fur and black tiger stripes, it was almost impossible to tell that this was just a slash without close inspection. This wasn't a devil fruit ability, but rather a form created purely by sword intent controlling the sword energy. And this wasn't the end. Having just unleashed a slash, Li Yan turned his blade and swung it upwards again, this time not forward but towards the sky. Flying slash, vermilion bird. The sword energy began to materialize the moment it was released, and when the slash was fully released and formed, it had transformed into a lifelike vermilion bird, soaring into the sky. Perhaps the only flaw was the color. After all, Li Yan currently only possessed black and white, no other colors. But this scene still left Diamante completely stunned. At first, he thought it was some kind of devil fruit ability, but he quickly sensed pure sword energy emanating from the white tiger and vermilion bird, pure sword energy radiating subtle sword intent. This made him realize that it wasn't a devil fruit ability at all, but simply swordsmanship. But how could swordsmanship achieve such an effect? Although Diamante knew that after reaching the level of a great swordsman, besides possessing sword intent, another characteristic was a more precise control over sword energy. This was why great swordsmen often exhibited various unusual phenomena during battle. For example, Vista of the 100 Regiment's flower sword would transform his sword energy into red rose petals during combat, but to transform it into something as lifelike as what was before was something Diamante had never seen or even heard of before. However, there was no time for him to think further. Bullfighting cloak. He still used this move, after all, it was his strongest defensive skill. However, having learned from her previous experience, this time Diamante not only used the bullfighting cloak but also activated her entire body's armament haki. She not only covered the cloak with a layer of armament haki but also her own body, hidden within it. It could be said that this was a complete triple defense. Boom. In the next instant, a white tiger formed from sword energy pounced on Diamante's cloak, immediately opening its blood-red maw to bite down. At the same time, the vermilion bird, which had been flying upwards, suddenly flipped over and began to swoop down towards Diamante. Damn it! It's one thing for sword energy to be so lifelike, but it can even change direction? Sensing the change above, Diamante's eyes widened in disbelief. Although it looked like a bird engulfed in white flames, it was essentially a slash, so why could it change direction mid-attack? Diamante couldn't understand it, so he could only unleash his full armament haki and pull his cloak tighter, making himself even more impenetrable. Suzaku swooped down from the sky, slamming into Diamante's cloak from above. The two slashes, one from above and one from below, combined with the double sword intent of destruction and death, finally overwhelmed Diamante's steel cloak, which shattered into countless pieces. However, although the cloak was torn, it also deflected most of the sword energy from the two slashes. His black hands, enveloped in armament haki, rose to block the two slashes coming from different directions. Intense pain instantly filled him, causing Diamante to let out a scream. Ah! However, this still failed to kill Diamante. After all, the sword energy and intent contained in these two strikes had been mostly consumed when his cloak was broken. Although the power was still great, it was not enough to kill a master of haki. With all his might, he finally managed to deflect the two strikes. Even his arms, covered in armament haki, were now covered with sword marks, looking quite miserable. At this moment, Diamante dared not give Li Yan any more chances to make a move. After all, his cloak was gone, and if he were to use the same move again, he would probably not be able to withstand it. He immediately used several of his ultimate techniques. He took out several small cannons and sprayed countless pieces of paper into the sky. But if you thought these were ordinary pieces of paper, you would be wrong. They were all genuine thorny iron balls, but Diamante had applied the ability of the fluttering fruit to them. Death Star dust. With a low shout, the countless pieces of paper that had been floating in the air instantly returned to their original form, countless sharp, thorny iron balls, falling from the sky like an impenetrable rain of iron towards Li Yan. Flying slash, Zuanwu. Another slash was unleashed, the movement seemingly unremarkable, except that it was aimed upwards, as if to disperse the thorny iron balls. However, a jaw-dropping change occurred again. Despite being a slash, it transformed into a gigantic beast about 3 meters above Li Yan's head, like a combination of a tortoise and a snake, firmly protecting Li Yan below. The thorny iron balls turned to dust upon contact with Zuanwu, losing all their lethality. Diamante was completely dumbfounded by the scene. Your slash can transform into a firebird and change direction in mid-air, that's one thing. But why can it also transform into a monster and hover in the air? This is completely against common sense. Kid, don't think you can win like this. I'll let you taste what it's like to be attacked from both sides. Half Moon Funeral. Gritting his teeth, Diamante attacked again, putting all his strength into it. A slash was suddenly unleashed along the ground, heading straight for Li Yan's undefended front. Flying slash, Azure Dragon. In response to Diamante, Li Yan launched another slash. This time, the slash manifested as the Azure Dragon, the leader of the four divine beasts, which swept towards Diamante in a manner as if swimming in water. Midway, Half Moon Funeral was defeated the moment it made contact, and the next moment, the ferocious Azure Dragon pounced on Diamante. Screams rang out one after another, making everyone who heard them shudder. A few seconds later, when the Azure Dragon formed from the sword energy dissipated, Diamante's figure reappeared before everyone, lying on the ground, covered in wounds and bleeding profusely. Fortunately, Li Yan controlled his power, otherwise, that attack would have definitely killed him. After all, this was bait Li Yan used to lure Doflamingo. He couldn't afford to die like that. Chapter 142 The Terrifying An. Slowly sheathing the Sun Chaser sword, Li Yan approached Diamante step by step. What kind of sword technique is that? Diamante, already covered in wounds and struggling to move, forced himself to maintain his fading consciousness just to ask Li Yan this question. As a fellow swordsman, and a top-tier swordsman very close to a great swordsman, Diamante simply couldn't understand Li Yan's bizarre sword techniques. Well, isn't it just a basic attack that becomes a powerful move? Alright, that term is too modern for you to understand. In other words, it's controlling sword intent, using sword intent to drive and shape sword energy. So, I didn't use any sword techniques. It was just a normal flying slash, only with more precise control when incorporating sword intent, that's all. Li Yan wasn't lying to this question. As Li Yan said, without the basic attack as ultimate move manual provided by the system, even someone with swordsmanship talent as high as Hawkeye would find it difficult to fully understand and actually use it. After all, this is a completely different swordsmanship from the One Piece world, arguably two entirely different systems. According to the manual, true basic attack as ultimate move only occurs when the user completely integrates sword intent into their body, moving at will without conscious control. This allows for various abilities even more unique than devil fruit powers. In short, the first step to achieving this is maintaining a state of activated sword intent in daily life, allowing the body to become accustomed to it. However, this is easier said than done. So far, Li Yan's longest stint in that state has only lasted a little over an hour, always ending unconsciously due to trivial matters. Therefore, Lin Fan still needs to consciously activate his sword intent and is far from the level described in the manual. Diamante's fall threw the four officers of the Square Army into panic. Lao Ji, who had gained a slight advantage in his fight with Luffy, immediately abandoned his opponent and rushed towards Diamante. However, Luffy, already annoyed from being suppressed for so long, was not about to let him have his way. He immediately used a shave to block Lao Ji's path between Lao Ji and Diamante. Hey, your opponent is me. His legs acted like pumps, accelerating blood flow, his skin turning red and emitting steam due to increased body temperature. Gear second. Let's begin the second round. Although Lao Ji was very anxious, he had no choice but to re-enter a fighting stance against Luffy. As for Dellinger and the other two, they were also blocked by their respective opponents, unable to reach Diamante. So, what are you going to do with this guy? Just as Li Yan was watching Luffy and the other three fight with great interest, his arms wrapped around Sun Chaser, Momousagi had somehow appeared beside him and asked, looking at the unconscious Diamante. She truly hadn't expected Li Yan to defeat Diamante so quickly. The key was, even though she hadn't witnessed the defeat because she was hiding in the cabin, how could she, as a great swordsman, not have sensed the final slash Li Yan used? However, none of that mattered now. Diamante on the ground was the real issue. This was a real problem. If you were to ask who among the 7 warlords of the sea was the most difficult to deal with, it definitely wasn't the strongest, Mihawk or Bartholomew Kuma, but Doflamingo. Having been with Churu for years, how could she not know his identity? It was safe to say that even if he attacked the Marines, those guys in Marigia's would only give him a superficial punishment and wouldn't really do anything to him. Therefore, after this incident, Doflamingo would inevitably go to the East Blue to cause trouble for Li Yan. Just bait. What else can I do but throw it into my East Blue underwater prison? Bear bait? You don't mean to, what do you think? Grinning, Li Yan revealed an innocent smile, while Momousagi covered her forehead, looking helpless. Hearing Li Yan's answer, Mamausaji knew perfectly well that this guy was about to cause trouble again, and the target was none other than Doflamingo. What was he planning to do? Overturn the 7 warlords table? Putting aside whether he could even overturn it, he wouldn't be able to get past Marijia's alone. Boom. Just then, a huge figure flew over at high speed and slammed hard into the gun pedestal next to Li Yan and Mamausaji. In an instant, wood chips flew everywhere, and even the huge pedestal of the bow gun was smashed, causing the entire twin 280mm gun to lose its support and tilt, crashing to the ground and destroying a large area of the deck again. "I'll F yourself." Seeing this scene, Li Yan was completely dumbfounded, and the classic Chinese curse unconsciously escaped his lips. Only then did they realize that the one who had just slammed down was Madhobase, one of the 4 executives of the Block Army, known as the Overweight Man, and the one who blasted him was N, who was hovering in midair, using moonwalk, looking at Li Yan with a displeased expression. "What's wrong with this woman now? How interesting, is she provoking me?" However, as soon as Li Yan finished speaking, he heard Mamausaji's voice, but he didn't understand what she was saying at all. Speaking of which, N and Madhobase were fighting quite normally, but then he saw Li Yan and Mamausaji whispering to each other. Well, even if they were talking normally, in N's eyes, the two of them were whispering, well, maybe even flirting. N was immediately extremely annoyed. He was fighting to the death here, and the two of them were flirting? His anger reached max. Just then, hovering in the air, Madhobase, noticing N's slight distraction, seized the opportunity and unleashed his ultimate move, Hell's 10,000 tons Ba'is. However, N, whose rage was at maximum, had only wanted to vent his anger by throwing something at the two guys, and Madhobase delivered himself right to his doorstep. Armament Haki, apply. Then, with a powerful whip kick, he sent the delivered object flying. Even after the kick was delivered, N hadn't realized what he'd kicked, he'd only vaguely felt that it was quite heavy. If Madhobase knew what N was thinking at that moment, he'd probably cry his eyes out. His ultimate move, Hell's 10,000 tons Ba'is, had made him weigh 10,000 tons, and this guy just felt it was a little heavy and easily kicked him away? Where's his manners? So, never provoke a woman's anger. Once a woman gets angry, her fighting power skyrockets 1,000-fold. She's absolutely not someone to mess with. Fortunately, Matchbase had already fainted when he was kicked away, and his devil fruit ability was thus deactivated. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been just a broken cannon, but the entire warship would have been destroyed here. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Thormode's Second Form. One stood on the deck, the other hovered in the air, her gazes locked in an unspoken battle. However, Li Yan, his heart bleeding as he stared at the carnage on the foredeck, especially the main gun at the bow, was completely oblivious to everything. "Ayan, you did that on purpose, didn't you?" "How could I? It was just an accident. After all, the opponent was so strong, how could I possibly control myself so well?" Seeing Li Yan look up at her and ask such a pointed question, Ayan firmly denied it. But her slightly evasive eyes betrayed her completely. To be honest, Li Yan was somewhat bewildered. Although he was certain from Ayan's gaze that she had done it on purpose, what was the reason? Just as Li Yan was filled with doubt, he suddenly remembered Mamausaji's words. "How interesting. Is she provoking me? Ayan provoking Mamausaji? Why? Could it be because of me? No, there's no reason for that, and it's impossible." Although somewhat slow-witted, someone did eventually consider this possibility. However, it was merely a fleeting thought before being dismissed from their mind, dismissing it as mere speculation. On the side of the warship, Najiko had a headache. It wasn't that his opponent was particularly powerful, but rather that this guy seemed to be swimming in the deck all day long. Senor Pick, one of the 4 executives of the Diamond Army, was a user of the water fruit, capable of swimming in solid matter as if it were water. While this ability was bizarre, it left Najiko somewhat helpless. The deck was made of wood, and even though it had transformed into a water-like form due to Senor Pick's ability, its essence remained that of wood. Attacking him with electricity wouldn't harm him, since wood is an insulator, after all. To completely destroy him, one would need to use a voltage far exceeding what wood could withstand, or even utilize the properties of electricity generating heat or magnetism. The problem lies precisely here. Once this attack lands, aside from the possibility of destroying the warship in one blow, the sheer volume of electricity could easily wipe out the surrounding Marines. In short, it's incredibly troublesome. Since he can't attack, he'll let the enemy attack him. With a quick thought, Nagiko had an idea. Thor mode, second form. With a low shout, a massive current was released from Nagiko's body, and he slowly became ethereal until he completely lost his physical form, transforming into a body entirely composed of lightning. Since his previous use of Thor mode in front of Li Yan, which resulted in him being called a blue fat man, Nagiko had worked incredibly hard. Finally, he had developed a second and third form within the basic Thor mode, and the form he was currently using was the second. In this form, Nagiko didn't become a giant fat man. Instead, he maintained his basic physique. If there were any changes, it would be that his short hair had grown long, and he was slightly taller. Judging from her appearance, she clearly put a lot of effort into developing her second form. However, while this second form may not be as imposing as the original Thor mode, its actual power is no less, and arguably even stronger. After all, to maintain this size, Nagiko had compressed the massive electrical output of the Thor mode to its absolute limit. Hovering about 20 centimeters above the deck, like a female war goddess, Nagiko looked down at Senior, who was still swimming on the deck, but didn't attack. Senior, on the other hand, was extremely anxious. Diamante had lost, then Match V's had also lost, and this woman was a Logia type, making her very difficult to deal with. Fortunately, she seemed somewhat wary of the warship and dared not use powerful attacks against him, otherwise, he would probably have been defeated even faster and more thoroughly than Match V's. Senior was well aware of this. But now, it seemed he couldn't delay any longer. He had to find a way to break the deadlock and rescue Diamante and Match V's. Even knowing the odds were against him, he was determined to try. With that thought, Senior dove downwards, disappearing from the deck as if submerged in water. A few seconds later, a strange movement appeared on the deck behind Nagiko, and Senior's body slowly emerged. Of course, even though Nagiko couldn't see it with her eyes, her observation haki allowed her to sense it clearly. However, Nagiko pretended not to notice anything, continuing to stare at the deck as if still searching for Senior. Seeing this, Senior didn't hesitate and leaped out of the deck. Armament haki. Back bridge throw. Senior, having leaped out of the deck, immediately activated his armament haki, covering his arms, and then reached behind Nagiko, attempting to grab her and use his signature back bridge throw. However, before Senior could make his next move, the previously stable electric current within Nagiko's body suddenly surged violently, accompanied by a burst of lightning and terrifying bolts of thunder that swirled and crackled around him. Armament haki can indeed allow one to come into contact with a Logia-type user's body, suppressing their elemental transformation and allowing their abilities to be applied to them. But this doesn't mean it can suppress Devil Fruit abilities. In the world of One Piece, there are currently only 3 known ways to nullify Devil Fruit abilities: Sea Stone, Sea Water, and the Dark Fruit. Armament haki can only touch the elemental body of a Logia-type user. It doesn't suppress the activation of their Devil Fruit abilities. In fact, this isn't the fundamental purpose of armament haki. Touching the elemental body of a Logia-type user is merely a side effect. Therefore, even with Senior's armament haki-covered hands touching him, Nagiko could still activate his ability. With 200 million volts of electricity, combined with extreme compression, the sheer volume of electricity within Nagiko's body was unimaginable to onlookers. Lightning crackled around him, instantly engulfing a small area around him. Senior, who had grabbed him from behind, was instantly electrocuted, his hair standing on end and black smoke billowing from his mouth. Under such a powerful current, even Vergo would be helpless, let alone someone like him with mediocre armament haki. Perhaps only someone with advanced armament haki, or someone like Luffy who is naturally immune to lightning, could completely withstand it. However, even with perfect control, the terrifying lightning had still blasted a hole about 2 meters in diameter into the deck beneath his feet. Deactivating his Thunder God form, Nagiko stood before the massive hole, looking somewhat troubled. "The Rear Admiral won't make me pay for it, will he?" Chapter 144 The Tragic Danger. Seeing Nagiko looking at him pitifully, Lian sighed slightly. What else could he do? He'd already destroyed a whole section of it. From now on, he absolutely couldn't fight on his ship, Even Adam Wood couldn't withstand that. Jian, can we talk about something? What do you want? Seeing Li Yan's expression, Momousaji subconsciously took a step back and asked warily. Look, my warship is already in this state. If Luffy suddenly throws a tomahawk, and then Buggy does a large-scale disintegration, this warship will truly be beyond repair. So, you and I will work together to blast these remaining 4 guys ashore? No way. Why? Li Yan was a little confused by Momousaji's decisive rejection. He hadn't asked her to do anything bad, had he? Why was she so decisive? Without even considering it? Because this job is too tiring, too physically demanding, thankless, and there's no benefit whatsoever. Hiss. When did Momousaji become so opportunistic, even trying to get a kickback for such a small thing? 30% off. You can get Adam Wood from me at 30% of the market price. Gritting his teeth, Li Yan said resolutely. Deal. Hearing this, Momousaji's eyes lit up, and she immediately said, Tell me, which pair do you want to take care of? Buggy and Dellinger. Okay, shave. As soon as she finished speaking, Momousaji activated shave, and the next moment, her figure appeared behind Dellinger. Armament Haki. With a low shout, jet black armament Haki instantly enveloped her right leg, and then her long leg was swung out in a whip kick. Boom. Dellinger was like a cannonball, blasted directly from the warship, instantly covering a distance of over 100 meters, and slamming heavily onto the beach. It even created a huge crater. No, I asked you to help blast him ashore, not turn the fight immediately. Looking at the unconscious Derringer in the crater after the dust settled, Li Yan came to Momousaji's side and complained wildly. When I was attacking, seeing a man wearing high heels was really disgusting, so I unconsciously used a little more force. Well, that was a strong reason, and Li Yan couldn't even refute it. Derringer was indeed disgusting, a grown man wearing women's shoes was one thing, but high heels at that. And you, are you ready? Just as Li Yan was feeling helpless, Momousaji looked at the bewildered Buggy and asked, Me? Ready for what? Buggy asked after a moment of hesitation and pointing to himself. Your Major General said that I should send both of you ashore, and now that guy has been sent there, it's your turn. As she spoke, Momousaji activated her armament Haki, and her long, white legs were once again covered in black. This scene terrified Bucky. He still vividly remembered what had happened to Dellinger. If this crazy woman kicked him too, how would he fare? Jian, that's enough. What do you mean? Didn't you tell me to blast them both ashore? Dellinger was already knocked unconscious by you. What's the point of blasting them, Bucky? No, I have to keep my promise. Unless you give me a 40% discount. Good heavens, Li Yan exclaimed. Good heavens, so this is what I was waiting for. Turning to look at the pitiful Bucky, after a fierce internal struggle, Li Yan made his decision. All right then, Bucky is yours, please continue. It's just a kick, it won't kill him. Just endure it, and you can save the branch at least several 100 million berries. Go Bucky. After saying that, Li Yan even gave Bucky an encouraging look. This almost made Bucky collapse. TCH, boring. However, seeing Li Yan's reaction, Momousaji didn't actually kick him, but turned and left with a look of disinterest. Seeing this, Buggy breathed a sigh of relief, as if he'd been given a second chance at life, and then gave Li Yan a resentful look. Li Yan could only pretend not to see this and quickly went to Luffy and Lao Ji's side. These two were engaged in a brutal, hand-to-hand combat, and it was getting increasingly intense. If he didn't act quickly, things could get really bad. There was also a crucial problem. Luffy's gear second had been active for almost a minute, and if it continued, it would cause irreversible damage to his body. While this damage wouldn't directly kill Luffy, nor would it have much immediate impact, it was like a toxin accumulating. Too much of it would be bad for his future. Whitebird was a prime example of this. Therefore, Li Yan changed his mind and abandoned the idea of throwing them both ashore. Otherwise, who knew how long they would fight? Luffy, I'll give you 10 more seconds. If you can't finish this, I'll do it myself. Of course, as the only two who couldn't defeat their opponent, you and Buggy will have to clean the branch's toilets for a month. Luffy, who had been thoroughly enjoying the brutal blows with Lao Ji, was completely taken aback by Li Yan's words. He'd do anything, just clean toilets. Sorry, I don't have time. I have to finish this in 10 seconds. He bowed sincerely, leaving Lao Ji completely bewildered. However, This was clearly a good opportunity. Earth Stomach Fist Ultimate Secret Technique, Battle Protection Fist, G. Mark. Lao Ji, who had appeared slender, suddenly bulged with muscles, transforming into a muscular man like a fitness enthusiast in just 1 second. He then made a G shape with his palm in front of him and unleashed his ultimate technique, the G. Mark. This was a special move used only in a defensive stance during combat, and it was also Lao Ji's strongest attack. With his unique footwork, he instantly closed the distance between them, and a lightning-fast ki blast palm strike slammed towards Luffy's abdomen. Gum Gum Jet, Scapegoat. Just as Lao Ji thought he was about to succeed, his vision blurred, followed by a strange sensation. Huh? Has this marine suddenly grown several times larger? However, there was no time to think or stop. He unleashed his full power, blasting the marine flying. Phew, that was close. At that moment, Luffy patted his chest and said, "How did you get here? Who did I just hit?" The blasted figure crashed onto the foredeck, further damaging the already chaotic surface. Only after the flying wood chips had settled somewhat did Lao Ji finally see clearly that the figure he had blasted away was none other than Match V's. Just as Lao Ji was stunned, Luffy's hands were already on his shoulders. Damn it! He suddenly snapped out of his daze, but it was too late. Armament Haki. Gum Gum Jet Maruzaku. Chapter 145 Arms and Artificial Devil Fruits. On the warship, the Marines were cleaning up the mess, putting sea stone shackles on the still-breathing pirates one by one. "Barry, can it be repaired? Too many parts are damaged. The spare timber on the warship is only enough to handle the critical parts, ensuring it doesn't affect navigation. What about the rest?" "The rest?" Barry's lips twitched slightly as he looked at the chaotic foredeck. "The rest can wait until we get back to shipyard. Otherwise, Rear Admiral, you should be prepared. The foredeck isn't worth repairing. Just replace it. Then replace it. Tell me how much atom wood you need, and I'll find a way to get it." "Okay, we'll calculate it as soon as possible." Nodding, Barry led a few shipwrights to work. After all, the warship had many damaged parts, holes everywhere. If some important parts weren't repaired quickly, it could easily lead to an accident on the Grand Line. Fortunately, they had brought a considerable amount of spare atom wood. Although it couldn't repair the entire ship, it was enough to repair those parts and allow the warship to sail normally. "Li Yan, what about that one over there?" Momausaji asked, pointing to the large crater on the beach 100 meters away. Since the battle, Li Yan had only ordered the prisoners on the ship to be held captive, without sending anyone to bring Dellinger back from the shore. No need to worry about it. Someone has to go back and report, right? I mean, you really intend to? That's right. Hearing this, Momausaji didn't know what to say. This guy seemed determined to take down Doflamingo. Whatever. By the way, after the 18th branch, prepare a dedicated gravity chamber for me. I feel my strength is still a bit weak lately, and I need to train in the training room for 2 or 3 months. After saying that, Momausaji didn't wait for Li Yan's reply and turned to walk into the cabin. "If you want to help, just say so. Saying you feel you're not strong enough is just being coy." Watching Momausaji's tall, departing figure, Li Yan's lips curled into a slight smile. Truly worthy of being the woman he had his eye on and had already decided on. Of course, Li Yan was referring to their 1-year agreement and the future plan to have Momausaji join his side. "She's gone, and you're still looking?" Just as Li Yan was considering whether to offer Momausaji a further discount, An's somewhat displeased voice suddenly sounded behind him. "Why do you walk so quietly? You startled me. You were too busy looking at the pretty girl. Even if I spoke loudly, you probably wouldn't have noticed." Hearing An's somewhat sarcastic words, Li Yan felt that his adjutant had been acting increasingly strangely lately. "By the way, didn't I tell you to search Diamante's ship? Is it over already?" "Yes, you'd better go and see for yourself." Speaking of serious matters, An's expression immediately turned serious. "Found something?" "Yes, the problem is quite serious." "Alright, let's go." Seeing An's serious expression, Li Yan knew the problem was probably significant. He immediately followed An, using Moonwalk, to reach Diamante's ship. To be precise, it was actually a large cargo ship, not a warship, and based on Li Yan's previous observations, the ship's draft indicated it was definitely full of cargo. Therefore, as soon as the battle ended, Li Yan immediately had An lead men aboard to search. Soon, The two arrived at the cargo hold. Rows upon rows of huge wooden crates came into view. After opening a few and examining them, Li Yan's expression became much more grave. Arms. That's right, several cargo holds on the ship are filled with arms, and these guns and cannons are enough to arm 2,000 men. This is interesting. Although I know Doflamingo is an underground middleman, especially in the arms trade, it's rare to see such a large quantity of weapons purchased at once. That's right, and to buy so many weapons at once, there are only a few forces on this sea. Hearing Li Yan's words, Anne nodded in agreement. Just as Li Yan said, weapons capable of fully arming 2 people at once are not something a small pirate crew could handle. The buyer must be someone important, and the purpose in purchasing these weapons is definitely not simple. Are there any survivors on the ship? Yes, Najiko is interrogating them, and I believe we'll have results soon. Also, there are some other things over there, you'd better take a look. He pointed to a box deep in the cargo hold. Unlike the other boxes, that box was significantly smaller and more conspicuous. Reaching the box, Li Yan opened it, his eyes narrowing instantly. Devil fruits. Indeed, the box contained devil fruits, and not just any devil fruits, but more than a dozen. Most importantly, these dozen or so devil fruits were completely identical, even the patterns on them were the same. 6 words immediately flashed through Li Yan's mind: artificial devil fruits. Don't you think these devil fruits are strange? Their shape and patterns are impossible. They are indeed strange. Li Yan nodded in agreement. After all, he couldn't very well say, I know these are artificial devil fruits, can I? No rush. I'll contact Admiral Kizaru later and have him come over. After all, we don't have any experts in this field in our science department. Let Admiral Kizaru take them to Vegapunk to take a look. There might be an unexpected surprise. After a moment of contemplation, Li Yan said. He had no use for these things and didn't even want them. It would be better to just hand it over to Vegapunk and let him focus on Doflamingo's production of artificial devil fruits. That way, perhaps there would be less resistance when he took action against Doflamingo later. Although artificial devil fruits were all trash to Li Yan, even trash can be reused, right? Most importantly, this would make headquarters and Mary Gia's trust him more. Look, whatever good stuff I find, I send it to headquarters immediately, without any selfish motives. Rear Admiral. Just then, Najiko appeared at the cargo hold door. Is it over? Yes, Rear Admiral, those pirates are willing to confess. Good, let's go. Nodding, Li Yan led Anne out of the cargo hold. It has to be said, having a skilled interrogator is really helpful. In such a short time, they've already pried those pirates' mouths open. Soon, the 3 of them arrived at another cabin, which Najiko was using as a temporary interrogation room. Inside, 2 Marines were guarding several pirates. However, the pirates' faces were far from pleasant. Although they appeared unharmed, their expressions clearly indicated they were on the verge of collapse. Tell me, where are these weapons going? Chapter 146 Kizaru arrives, Li Yan makes a big reveal. 2 of the 3 pirates only knew they were heading to the Ramen Islands, while the 3rd had overheard Match V's mention it. Upon hearing that the trading partner was Baroque Works, Li Yan understood. According to the original timeline, Crocodile should be laying the groundwork now, preparing to officially incite a riot in Alabasta, and these weapons were likely intended for that, to be supplied to the rebels. Should he go to Alabasta now? After a moment's hesitation, Li Yan decided against it. It wasn't that he was afraid, but simply that things had to be done one step at a time. Besides, the riot hadn't started yet, so there was no rush. He could deal with Crocodile after dealing with Doflamingo. After asking about the weapons trading partner, Li Yan inquired again about a box of artificial devil fruits. Unfortunately, none of the 3 knew anything about them this time, not even what artificial devil fruits were. It made sense. This was one of Doflamingo's biggest secrets. Why would he let these lowly minions know? Seeing that he couldn't get any more information, Li Yan had no choice but to give up and wait until Diamante and the Square Army's officers woke up. Back on the warship, he immediately called Kizaru. When Li Yan mentioned that he was having a burst of inspiration and had written some good stuff, even the usually laid-back Kizaru immediately set off. In the blink of an eye, the sun had set, and even the warship's repairs were nearing completion. Li Yan couldn't help but admire the shipwright's efficiency in this world. While it was far from the speed at which Iceberg and Frankie could build a ship and do interior finishing in 3 days, Barry and his crew were still incredibly fast. Just as Li Yan was idly leaning against the side of the warship, enjoying the sea breeze, a flash of light suddenly fell from the sky. Wow, Li Yan has done something big again. That's terrifying. It's known that Korchin Island could normally host at least several thousand pirates year-round, but when Kizaru flew over the island, his observation Haki had already detected that there weren't many survivors left. Seeing the dozen or so pirate ships beside the warship and the large craters on the shore, he could easily understand. Li Yan had likely repeated what he'd done in Demon Valley Town. Most importantly, one of the pirate ships bore the banner of the Blood Wolf Pirates. Admiral Kizaru, you're here fast. I've been traveling for almost 5 hours. Tell me, what brings you here? I've had a recent burst of inspiration. Oh, Li Yan, you're talking nonsense. Kizaru might be a lazy bum, but that didn't mean he was brainless and easily fooled. In fact, most people were deceived by his appearance. He was definitely the most shrewd of the 3 admirals. A burst of inspiration, and he wanted him to go immediately? Nobody believed that. Hearing this, Li Yan grinned. Here, this is it. Open it and see if it's worth coming here yourself. Pointing to the box on the ground, Li Yan said. After Li Yan's comment, Kizaru became interested. He fired a laser beam from his finger, breaking the lock, and then lightly kicked the lid with his right foot. Seeing this, Li Yan almost lost his temper. Why show off when you're just opening a box? A laser beam certainly looks impressive, but my deck is innocent. This is atom wood. Okay, considering the other party is an admiral, Li Yan will tolerate it. When the box was opened and its contents were revealed, Kizaru's eyes, hidden behind his sunglasses, narrowed slightly. This is an artificial devil fruit, something Doflamingo created. How did you get it? His men attacked my warship, I captured them, and then found it on their ship. Pointing to Diamante's ship not far away, Li Yan said. Attacked your warship? Only then did Kizaru remember that the warship looked somewhat different when he looked at it from the sky. Yes, this is a warship built for me by the Carrera Company. It incorporates many new technologies, and this is its first sea trial since its launch. Look, those repairing the ship are Carrera's shipwrights. Having Carrera open a branch in the East Blue was definitely a brilliant move. Not only did it solve Li Yan's shipbuilding problem, but it also allowed them to handle many other tasks. Sure enough, after it was mentioned that the ship was built by Carrera and that their people were repairing it, Kizaru stopped asking about the warship. After all, it was the world's strongest shipbuilding company and the best shipwrights. It wouldn't be surprising what kind of ship they built, would it? But if Kizaru witnessed a cannon shot being fired, he probably wouldn't think that way. Who attacked you? Doflamingo's top executive, Diamante, and 4 officers from the Square Army. By the way, they also had a large amount of munitions on board, enough to fully arm 2,000 people. Munitions. Speaking of which, Staff Officer Churu had been keeping a close eye on Doflamingo. Although they knew he was a middleman in the underworld and handled most of the world's arms trade, they had never been able to catch him red-handed. This time, Li Yan caught him red-handed? Where are they? They're in seastone shackles, locked up down there. But you can't take them with you, I still need them. What do you want them for? Fishing. Hearing this, Kizaru's eyes flashed, instantly understanding Li Yan's intention. What could he possibly fish for with a few Dong Quixote family executives? Doflamingo, of course. That's terrifying. Li Yan, you actually want to target the 7 warlords of the sea? Are the supernovas no longer enough for you? Admiral Kizaru, do you know the truth about Doflamingo's lair, Dressrosa? Glancing at Kizaru, Li Yan said calmly. What do you mean? Actually, Dressrosa is truly one of the Navy's greatest shames. Li Yan directly recounted the events of Dressrosa, including Sugar's hobby fruit. This made Kizaru frown repeatedly. No wonder Vice Admiral Churu always says, why, for so many years, have you always wanted to send someone to Dressrosa to gather intelligence, but never actually done it? According to you, Vice Admiral Churu probably did send people, perhaps more than once, but Doflamingo turned them into toys, to the point that we've all forgotten they existed? There's even such a devil fruit. To be honest, Kizaru was quite surprised. This kind of devil fruit wasn't even recorded in the Navy's Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. So, with this information, I think Fleet Admiral Sengoku won't stop me from using Diamante and the others to lure Doflamingo, right? Li Yan said with a smile. Actually, it was quite frustrating. Without enough strength to take down a pirate, You had to prepare a bunch of reasons first. Otherwise, not only would you fail to defeat the pirate, but you'd be the one in trouble. The navy of this world is really. However, it's only now that he's ready. Sooner or later, he'll get the navy back on track. If it's true, the fleet admiral probably won't stop it, but Doflamingo is not an easy opponent. Chapter 147. Are you sure this thing is a slash? Doflamingo isn't stupid, and he also has a traitor within the Navy's high command. Therefore, he won't easily come if headquarters sends forces to cooperate with Li Yan. But without sending high-ranking combat support, Kizaru feels that the East Blue Navy's strength is somewhat insufficient. Although in the eyes of the admirals, Doflamingo is nothing special, among the vice admirals, there's really no one who can reliably defeat him. Even admiral candidates Momausaji and Chatten would probably only be evenly matched. Huh? Momausa is on your warship. Just as Kizaru was thinking this, he suddenly noticed something and asked. She said she's going to stay at my branch for a few months. Wow, Li Yan, you're something else. You've already snagged one of our Navy's beauties. If Chatten finds out, he'll probably give you a piece of his mind. What are you talking about? Jian and I aren't like that. Still denying it? If we weren't like that, why would Momausaji be so interested in you? Kizaru, outwardly a lazy bum but inwardly incredibly shrewd, had already seen through everything. But unfortunately, Li Yan, this simpleton, still hadn't realized it. With Momausaji around, I can guarantee you won't lose, but winning will still be very difficult. After teasing Li Yan a few times, Kizaru returned to the main topic. Admiral Kizaru, how about we spar a bit before you make your decision? Wow, Li Yan, you're getting more and more terrifying. You actually want to challenge an admiral? Kizaru said with an exaggeratedly shocked expression. That cheeky look, if Li Yan weren't weak enough, he'd really like to punch him. That's fine too. I'm quite curious about your current strength. Here? Please make sure we go to the island. This warship has been under repair for half a day, and I don't want it to be damaged again. Upon hearing this, Li Yan resolutely rejected the suggestion to spar right there. He was joking. If he and Kizaru fought here, the warship would be totaled. Alright, Najiko, don't hide anymore. Come along if you want to watch. Kizaru nodded and called towards the stern. Soon, Najiko appeared, head bowed, like a child who had done something wrong. Actually, from the beginning, both Li Yan and Kizaru knew Najiko was eavesdropping. But it didn't matter. To Li Yan, Najiko was a die-hard loyalist with 100% loyalty. And to Kizaru, she was his personal disciple. Even if she hadn't been eavesdropping, he planned to take her to watch the battle. After all, watching his fighting style should provide Najiko with considerable inspiration regarding the use of her devil fruit. I want to go too. Just as the two were preparing to take Najiko to the island, Momausaji suddenly jumped out and said. She hadn't seen it before, only sensed the sword aura Li Yan used to defeat Diamante. Now, with such a good opportunity to see Li Yan fight Admiral Kizaru at full strength, she couldn't miss it. Maybe she'd even get to witness the scene she'd missed before. Momausaji was still very curious about Li Yan's special sword aura. Hey, we still have a 1-year agreement. Is it really okay for you to openly see my trump card like this? Oh, a 1-year agreement? Tell me about it, I'm very curious. The words 1-year agreement instantly piqued Kizaru's curiosity. Although he was old, his gossip instincts were still very strong. Admiral, please don't ask. This is a secret between me and this guy. Oh, how scary, a secret between opposite sexes. Okay, then I won't ask. But let's hurry up and go. I want to go back and rest as soon as we're done. It's already overtime. Remember to settle the overtime pay with Corona's 18 styles. In the end, the four of them arrived on the island together. Li Yan and Kizaru stood 30 meters apart, while Momausaji and Najiko retreated 200 meters to watch the battle. Come on. Kizaru beckoned to Li Yan, clearly not intending to make a move. But this was quite normal. A Marine admiral who had been famous for many years sparring with Li Yan was basically a training spar. How could Kizaru possibly take the initiative to attack? He would rather let Li Yan attack so that he could understand his current strength level. Then Admiral Kizaru, be careful. Flying slash, White Tiger. Drawing his great sword, Sun Chaser, Li Yan did not hold back and directly unleashed a flying slash. The white streak of sword energy had barely been unleashed, less than a meter from the sword, when it began to transform, instantly transforming into a lifelike white tiger that lunged at Kizaru with bared fangs and claws. Even Kizaru was startled. His primary power was his devil fruit ability, but to complement it, he had also trained in swordsmanship. While he might not have reached the level of a great swordsman, he certainly possessed the skills of one. Therefore, Kizaru could clearly sense the terrifying sword intent contained within this strike. Most importantly, why could the sword energy transform into a living, breathing beast? This wasn't just the sword energy shaping itself. Didn't you see the white tiger's limbs stamping across the ground? If he hadn't seen Li Yan first unleash a flying slash, which then transformed into a white tiger, Kizaru would have truly believed it was a living creature. Similarly, besides Kizaru's astonishment, Momousaji, watching from 100 meters away, was equally shocked. She stared intently at the slash, trying to discern something from it. Unfortunately, nothing could be discerned. Li Yan couldn't understand how he had done it. Li Yan, however, knew perfectly well that a single slash wouldn't be enough to harm Kizaru. In fact, he couldn't have defeated Diamante with a single white tiger attack, let alone Kizaru. He immediately raised his sun chaser again, swinging it upwards into Kizaru's sides. Flying slash, vermilion bird. Flying slash, azure dragon. 3 slashes, one forward, one to the left, and one to the right, formed a pincer movement, carrying terrifying sword intent as they attacked Kizaru. Seeing this, Kizaru's lazy expression softened, replaced by seriousness. Yet a mirror. A golden light gathered in his hand and shot out, striking the ground between them before reflecting back towards Li Yan. Then, using this path of light, Kizaru merged into it and began moving along it. While this wouldn't truly allow him to reach the speed of light, it would certainly be beyond the reach of physical techniques. The fastest person in the pirate world is no joke. However, Li Yan, who was intimately familiar with all of Kizaru's techniques, was naturally prepared. He still had a defensive slash, didn't he? Flying slash, Genbu. Another slash was unleashed, and a gigantic Genbu appeared before Li Yan. Genbu didn't move. It was a technique where sword energy was solidified and held in place by sword intent. This form existed purely for defense. Anything that entered would be shredded to pieces. Yo, that's terrifying. I almost got hit. Before the gigantic Genbu, Kizaru stopped moving, reformed into a physical form, and said in a rather cheeky tone. Don't brag, Admiral Kizaru, but if you don't look behind you, you really might get hit. Hearing this, Kizaru sensed something, turned his head slightly, and was instantly dumbfounded. What had he just seen? The white tiger conjured from the slash suddenly came to a halt, then turned and continued its attack. The vermilion bird and azure dragon in the sky also flew in an arc as a result. He was once again caught in a three-way attack. This was outrageous. Are you sure this thing is really a slash? Chapter 148 Plotting against Ming, Li Yan makes another revelation. Kizaru's eyes widened behind his sunglasses. What he saw was a Genbu blocking his path, a white tiger pouncing menacingly from behind, and Suzaku and Sarayu flanking him from the left and right. The scene was indescribably bizarre. Was this swordsmanship, or some devil fruit he'd never heard of? If Kizaru hadn't sensed sword intent within the 4 divine beasts, the above statement would have been a statement of fact, not a question. However, although caught off guard by Li Yan, an admiral was still an admiral and wouldn't be defeated by such a thing. He used the Yada mirror once more, refracting the ground to the left of Genbu, instantly appearing behind Li Yan. Yosakuni no Magatama. The best way to counter an encirclement was to use speed to break through the encirclement, then place all the targets in front of him, finishing them off with a wide-range finishing move. This was Kizaru's logic, and in some ways, it wasn't wrong at all. However, the prerequisite is that you need to possess Kizaru's speed and a massively wide area attack skill like the Yosakuni no Magatama. Elementalizing and then reforming in midair, countless light projectiles rained down in a wide area attack. The torrential rain of attacks directly riddled the white tiger on the ground and the vermilion bird and azure dragon in the sky with holes. Even Li Yan, who was using the black tortoise for defense, barely managed to hold on. As for the black tortoise, it was already badly damaged and almost collapsed. And this was only because Kizaru controlled his power and didn't go all out. Otherwise, Li Yan would probably have been instantly killed. In the original work, the scene of Kizaru kicking a supernova one by one on the Sabaody archipelago was truly impressive. Wow, Li Yan, you're really scary. You even blocked my Yosakuni no Magatama. Stop lying. You clearly calculated it perfectly, and then used just enough power for me to barely defend against. If you had used your full strength, I'd probably be dead." After finishing, Kizaru transformed into a photon and reformed in front of Li Yan, then said with an irritating expression. Li Yan's lips twitched at that look. "I understand your strength now. It's indeed somewhat beyond my expectations, but at most you can only fight Doflamingo to a standstill. Defeating him will be difficult, after all. That guy's devil fruit ability has already awakened." At this moment, Kizaru also put away his playful expression, and said with a hint of seriousness. About what I expected. However, this is only for me today. As for dealing with Doflamingo, that will be a matter of at least a month later, won't it?" Hearing this, Kizaru instantly realized that he had indeed overlooked something. After Li Yan leaves headquarters, it will only take him a few months to rebuild his current strength from scratch. Give him another month, and Doflamingo might truly be no match for him. Moreover, there's Momousaji. Even if Li Yan's strength hasn't improved at all, the two of them working together can still defeat Doflamingo, or even capture him. Perhaps I'm worrying too much? However, Doflamingo is a very cautious person. How can you be sure he'll do as you wish and just storm into the 18th branch to rescue him? Let's not even talk about whether he's worried about the Navy setting a trap, like planting an admiral in your 18th branch to lure him in. Even if he doesn't storm your 18th branch, he can simply go to the 5 elders and ask them to order the Navy to release him. From what I understand, if he makes that request, the 5 elders will most likely agree. This is indeed a problem. After all, while others may not know Doflamingo's true identity, Kizaru, as a Marine Admiral, certainly does. Furthermore, the Navy's High Command had long suspected that Doflamingo had some leverage over Mary Giais. Otherwise, even considering Doflamingo's past as a celestial dragon, the 5 elders' actions regarding certain matters were somewhat incomprehensible. In this case, Doflamingo wouldn't need to force his way in. A simple message to the 5 elders would likely resolve the issue. Therefore, Li Yan's plan to use Diamante and the others to lure Doflamingo would end before it even began. This problem is actually quite easy to solve. We just need to utilize Vice Admiral Vergo of the G5 branch. Vergo? What do you mean? Admiral Kizaru probably doesn't know, but Vergo is actually one of Doflamingo's top officers. He infiltrated the Navy over a decade ago, acting as Doflamingo's informant. Upon hearing this, Kizaru's eyes narrowed behind his sunglasses. You're saying Vergo is a spy? That's right. So, after Admiral Kizaru returns, he'll stage a scene with the fleet admiral, letting Vergo know that the arms ship is in my hands, and that Diamante and the others are imprisoned in the 18th branch's prison. At the same time, he also needs to confirm that you don't know about the artificial devil fruits. This way, Doflamingo will naturally think that I withheld those fruits. I see. He thinks you withheld the artificial devil fruits and didn't hand them over to headquarters. To protect this secret, he'll definitely go directly to the East Blue to deal with you, instead of asking the 5 elders to handle it. Kizaru nodded slightly, understanding Li Yan's intentions. However, all of this depends on Vergo indeed being a spy as Li Yan said, and Fleet Admiral Sengoku being willing to cooperate. Admiral Kizaru, you can pass on a message to the Fleet Admiral from me, and he will naturally cooperate with this plan. Oh? What message? Hearing this, Kizaru immediately became interested. Tell the Fleet Admiral that it was Vergo who discovered Rosinante's identity and severely injured him, directly leading to his death. Rosinante? Searching his memory, Kizaru felt he'd heard the name somewhere before, but couldn't quite place it. That's right. As long as you tell the Fleet Admiral that, he'll definitely cooperate. Alright, I'll pass it on to the Fleet Admiral. Seeing that Li Yan was unwilling to elaborate, Kizaru didn't press further and nodded. An hour later. Rear Admiral, the emergency repairs on the warship are complete. Although it can't reach optimal combat readiness, it's fine for navigation. Thank you for your hard work. Li Yan patted Barry's shoulder. There was no way around it. Barry was still the size of a 12-year-old, far too short. Anne, issue the order to set sail and return to the East Blue. Yes, Rear Admiral. Watching Anne leave, Li Yan, who was about to go into the cabin to rest, found a gaze fixed on him. Turning around, who else could it be but Momousaji? You're staring at me like that, it's easy for me to misunderstand and think you have some ulterior motive. Teach me. Ignoring Li Yan's words, Momousaji directly uttered 2 words. However, These two words left Li Yan somewhat bewildered, completely not understanding what she was talking about. Teach you what? The sword technique you used when you fought Admiral Kizaru? Teach me. Okay, so it wasn't her lust for his body, but rather for his sword technique. Although Li Yan wasn't against teaching the Mouseji, the problem was that they still had a 1-year agreement. And now she was asking him to teach her his biggest trump card. Was it really appropriate to make such a request? Chapter 149 The Mass Fainting Incident at Headquarters. Just as Li Yan was towing Diamante's arms ship back to the East Blue, Kizaru also returned to headquarters. After all, this guy possessed the glint fruit. Although he couldn't truly reach the speed of light, his speed was still formidable. He covered thousands of nautical miles in just over 4 hours. Even fighter jets weren't that fast. Add to that his constant laser attacks and his wide range, machine gun like Yosakuni no Magatama, and Li Yan suddenly felt his own guns and cannons weren't so appealing anymore. Kizaru, who was preparing to lock the artificial devil fruit in his office safe and go back to sleep comfortably, opened the door to find his adjutant standing inside, and his face immediately fell. Without his adjutant speaking, he could already guess that Fleet Admiral Sengoku had discovered his sneaking out and had instructed his adjutant to wait there and report to the Fleet Admiral as soon as he returned. Admiral Kizaru, Fleet Admiral Sengoku says. Alright, you can go back now. I'll go to the Fleet Admiral's office in a bit. Yes, Admiral. Watching his adjutant leave, Kizaru sighed slightly. Well, no need to wait until tomorrow, looks like he'll have to work overtime again tonight. He then picked up the box containing the artificial devil fruits and left his office. Yo, Fleet Admiral, you're terrifying. What time is it? Still working overtime. Without knocking, Kizaru simply opened the door to Sengoku's office and walked in, his irritating voice naturally ringing out. Sengoku, who was engrossed in processing documents, immediately frowned. However, he was used to it and didn't actually lose his temper. You rascal, it's one thing to slack off all the time, but now you're the only one of the 3 admirals stationed at headquarters, and you just disappeared without a word. What if something happens and we need your mobile support? Go back and write a 100,000-word self-criticism, and half your salary this month will be deducted. Putting down the documents in his hand, Sengoku began his reprimand. Having been Kizaru's superior for so many years, he knew exactly where his Achilles heel was. Sure enough, upon hearing about the 100,000-word self-criticism and the half-salary deduction, Kizaru's face fell. Fleet Admiral, this time there really is something extremely important. It's not just my personal matter, but a matter of great importance concerning the Navy and the stability of the entire world. Sengoku was somewhat surprised, as this wasn't something Kizaru would say. The guy who always slacked off was actually saying he was sneaking out for something important concerning the Navy and even the world's stability? Tell me, if it's true, I can cancel this punishment. Are you serious? Kizaru's expression immediately became excited. Really, you can start now. Okay. Actually, I went to Korchin Island. Korchin Island? What were you doing there? Fleet Admiral, before you get to the details, take a look at this. With that, Kizaru placed the box he had brought with him on Sengoku's table and opened it. Sengoku, wanting to see what Kizaru was up to, glanced into the open box. But that one glance was enough to keep his eyes glued to it. Devil fruits? A whole bunch of devil fruits, at least a dozen. But why are they all shaped like apples? Even the patterns are the same. Confused, Sengoku looked up at Kizaru, waiting for his explanation. Fleet Admiral, these are artificial devil fruits. Made by that guy Doflamingo. What? Artificial devil fruits. Doflamingo. These 2 keywords immediately made Sengoku think of many things. Quickly, tell me the whole story in detail. Okay, actually I received Li Yan's call this afternoon. 5 minutes later, after Kizaru recounted the whole incident, Sengoku frowned deeply. Li Yan's test voyage of the new warship, plus taking Marines to Korchin Island for training, that's fine. Being attacked by Diamante and the others, retaliating, subduing, and capturing them, that's fine too. Even confiscating their ship's worth of weapons and this box of artificial devil fruits, that's also perfectly acceptable. Li Yan even proactively reported to Kizaru and handed over these devil fruits, which can be considered quite dutiful and without any personal motives. But what's with Diamante and the others using Doflamingo as bait? Shouldn't this kind of thing be decided by headquarters? Although even with this ship's worth of weapons and artificial devil fruits as evidence, most of the 5 elders wouldn't agree to him taking action against Doflamingo. But for Li Yan, a rear admiral, to directly attack a Shichibuke, isn't that a bit much? In truth, the Sengoku of today has long lost the youthful vigor he possessed as an admiral. His considerations are now more aligned with Marigyi's and the Navy, rather than right and wrong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have targeted the 100 pirates in the original story. Doing so wouldn't have truly suppressed pirate forces, but rather made the seas more chaotic, resulting in more civilian deaths. The real reason is that Marigyi's supports pirates to facilitate their communication with the world. Look at what Whitebird did. His subjects lived in peace and prosperity. If the 4 emperors of the New World acted like this, it would directly threaten Marigyi's rule. What would the member states think? Being under Whitebird's rule seemed like a good thing. No need to pay exorbitant annual celestial fees, protection, and no fear of pirate attacks. Who would want to be a member state then, and who would want to pay celestial fees every year? Therefore, Whitebird crossed Marigyi's bottom line, and had to be eliminated. But even with so much evidence of Doflamingo's violations, Sengoku couldn't bring himself to eliminate him. After all, just as the 5 elders said, the balance between the Navy, pirates, and the 7 warlords of the sea is the cornerstone of maintaining world stability and Marigyi's rule, and it cannot be easily shaken. Fleet Admiral Li Yan also said something. Seeing that Sengoku's expression was off, Kizaru quickly said, "What is it?" He said that Vergo is one of Doflamingo's top executives, and he has been an undercover agent in the Navy for over 10 years. What? Can you be sure? Upon hearing this, Sengoku's expression changed instantly. A pirate had planted a spy among his men. Could he tolerate this? I can't be sure, but Li Yan asked me to pass on some words to you. What words? Li Yan said that Vergo discovered Rosinante's identity back then, and even beat Rosinante to the brink of death, directly or indirectly causing his eventual death. Rosinante. Boom. In Kizaru's shocked gaze, a terrifying aura erupted from Sengoku's body. This was the only one in the Navy with Conqueror's haki. A terrifying aura erupted and spread outwards, quickly engulfing most of the headquarters area. Those Marines still on duty or without rest, remaining within headquarters, except for a few stronger individuals, all fainted instantly. Chapter 150 Momousaji. When it comes to destruction, I'm a professional. Crack. Hearing this sound, Li Yan's heart skipped a beat. His head slowly turned like a robot, heading towards the source of the sound. Sure enough, there stood Mama Taro, standing on the side of the ship, her hands resting on the gunwale. However, all Li Yan could see was wood chips flying everywhere. Where Mama Taro's hands were resting, there was no gunwale at all. It was as if a piece had been bitten off by some ferocious beast. Li Yan began to regret it. Why had he succumbed to Mama Taro's tyranny and taught her these things? After learning the cultivation method, this woman immediately put it into action, which meant constantly maintaining the activation of sword intent in daily life and getting her body used to its presence. The result was the current situation. She could destroy anything she touched. At first, it was alright. She was just holding a cup while drinking water, and the sword intent leaking from her hand sliced the cup into pieces. But since the cup wasn't worth much, Li Yan didn't say anything. But what happened afterward became increasingly outrageous. Damaging chairs and hatches were minor issues, but now it wasn't even sparing its own warship. The entire side of the ship was already damaged in at least 10 places. That's all money, no, all merit points. At this moment, Li Yan really wanted to say, "Great God, please stop your supernatural powers. My place is too small to contain you. If you want to cause trouble, go back to headquarters." Li Yan, to what extent do I need to master this before I can use that sword technique you used before? When you can maintain it naturally for an hour without destroying anything. Can't I learn it directly and slowly build up this foundation later? No, your control over sword intent is too poor. You can't learn it directly. Hearing this, Momousaji looked puzzled. Shouldn't sword intent be something only great swordsmen possess? Yet, she was being criticized by a swordsman for her poor control over sword intent? Was this reasonable? Although she wanted to complain, Momousaji held back for the sake of that magnificent sword technique. He rekindled his sword intent, spreading it throughout his body, and maintained it. Click. After more than 10 seconds, Li Yan heard the familiar sound again. He sighed softly and walked directly into the cabin. Out of sight, out of mind. Back in his private captain's cabin, Li Yan activated the system. System, open the mission panel, ding. Mission panel opened, ding. Daily Mission 1, build a new generation of naval warships, and construct at least 5. Upon completion, you will receive a guide to ironclad warship technology. Current progress, 1/5, ding. Daily Mission 2, possess at least 3,000 Marines with a DAO power value of 30 or higher. Upon completion, you will receive 2,000 elite Marines. Current progress, 897/3000, ding. Daily Mission 3, kill or capture 5 pirates with a bounty of 100 million berries or more. Upon completion, you will receive 1 chance to randomly draw high-level talent. Current progress, 4/5, ding. Daily Mission 4, possess a subordinate with admiral-level combat power. Upon completion, you will receive 1 chance to attract a powerful individual. Current progress, 0/1, ding. Special Mission 1, kill, capture, or subdue all 7 warlords of the sea. Upon completion, you will receive basic technical data on piston engine aircraft. Current progress, 0/7, ding. Special Mission 2. Lead a large-scale battle involving tens of thousands of people and achieve victory. Upon completion, a designated S-rank character will be granted 3 talents. Current progress, 0/1, system, Mission 3 should be completed. Let me calculate for you. There are 4 supernovas in the Blood Wolf Pirates, right? Add Diamante, and that makes 5. Hey, don't you dare steal my achievements, ding. This system will not make mistakes, nor will it steal the host's achievements. Then explain to me why Mission 3 is not completed, ding. According to this system's query, Diamante's bounty is 99 million, not reaching 100 million. What? Li Yan was instantly dumbfounded. Although he couldn't possibly remember the bounty amounts he had seen in his previous life, Diamante was a fierce general under Doflamingo and the leader of the Square Army, a combat group. Even if it wasn't 500 or 600 million, 300 or 400 million wouldn't be unreasonable, right? How could it only be 99 million, less than even some of the supernovas in the Blood Wolf Pirates? Wait a minute, I seem to remember now. The bounties for the 7 warlords of the sea never increase. Even Doflamingo only has a little over 300 million, and even Kuma doesn't have 300 million. That's ridiculous. System, I protest. Based on the Navy's bounties, this is too absurd, ding. The host's complaint has been received. According to this system's judgment, this is an invalid complaint and will be ignored. Ouch. Although he really wanted to complain, the final interpretation rested with him. There was nothing he could do but endure it. Speaking of which, the rewards for this batch of missions were quite tempting for Li Yan, but the problem was that none of them could be completed immediately. He could only look at them and enjoy the view. Especially the 7 warlords of the sea mission, the piston fighter. But it was just for looking. He really couldn't do that right now. Especially Kuma and Hawkeye, with his current strength, that would be asking for a beating. After enjoying the view, it was time to tally up his merit points. To be honest, this was quite a loss. After all, 10 pirate crews were wiped out by Aisho, and Aisho isn't currently under his command, so those merits have nothing to do with him. Roughly calculated, at least 2 million merits are gone, which is heartbreaking. Fortunately, he still managed to take down more than 10 pirate crews, including the Blood Wolf Pirates and Diamante, gaining a total of over 6.8 million merits. While the gains weren't particularly surprising, they basically met expectations, and combined with what he already had, his merit points had ballooned to over 7 million. However, Li Yan didn't plan to build any structures this time. After all, it would only take a month at most for the remaining 4 warships to be completed, after which he would receive the technical guidance for ironclad warships. By then, he would likely have to buy countless materials from the system, and they certainly wouldn't be cheap. It's important to understand that the pirate world doesn't have such a sophisticated industrial system. Such a massive demand for specialized steel can't be met domestically. Even ignoring whether the pirate world possesses the technology to produce special steel suitable for warships, the quantity Li Yan needs simply can't meet. Therefore, these merit points should be saved for now. Not only saved, but Saldo should also take the training Marines out for combat training to earn more merit points. Knock knock knock. Just then, a knock came at the door. Li Yan, who was about to call out, suddenly widened his eyes. Countless uncontrolled sword energies suddenly poured in from outside the door, instantly slicing the entire hatch into pieces. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.